I didn't have enough clothes on the other night, so.
Good
Morning, everyone.
information that.
You know how you think, I put some English through. Sorry. I started with the Merry Sweet this morning. Good morning and welcome to Merry People Overview Committee. I'm Peggy Wood, the chair, and I just ask people to. We are quite a good group of people here today.
Good morning, I'm Tanya Miles, I'm the Executive Director for People and the Statutory Director for Children's Services and Adult Services at the Council.
Hi, I'm Claire Wild, councillor for the Severn Valley.
Morning, all. My name is Leslie Brown. I'm Service Manager of the Community. Morning, all. Laura Tyler, Assistant Director of Joint Commission.
Yes.
Mondor, Shaw, Assistant Director of Education. Thank you.
Morning all, Natalie Rookford, Assistant Director for Adult Social Care. Hello, I'm Amanda Alcock, I'm Service Manager in Adults.
Each Broomhall, Wham Division, Councillor Wham Division.
Bruce Houghton, Councillor for Bishop's Castle and the Shadows spokesperson for children education.
I'm Duncan Kerr, councillor for Oswestry South.
Harry, Shropshire Council for Ludlow Sands.
I'm Kevin Pardy, councillor for Swindon.
Jeff Anderson, councillor for Hulsk.
Hilary Love, councillor for Church Breton and Crowden Arms.
Shelley Davis, Committee Officer.
I'm Dodds, the Council Scrutiny Manager.
Sophie Foster, Overview and Scrutiny Officer.
Thank you, everybody. Please note that this meeting has been live streamed and recorded. Please also note that all remote participants are muted at the outset of the meeting and are only able to speak at the invitation of the chair. Please raise your virtual hand if you wish to speak and then only unmute when the chair invites you to make your contribution. As chair, I may ask that you are muted if you do not participate in this way. Apologies for absence is Sean Lyons and Cecilia Motley has caught the lurgy that's going round. Any disclosable pecuniary interest?
Thank you, Chair. I'm a trustee for a learning disability charity which manages contracts from Shropshire Council and have a family member attending Sevendale School.
Minutes of the meeting held on the 10th of July. You all happy with those?
Yes.
All in favour? Yeah. Public questions, there are none. Member questions.
Thank you, Chair. My question's around post-16 education transport. And I'm aware of a number of families that are already concerned that they may not be able to meet the cost of post-16 home to college transport. And in some instances, this is impacting on the choices that a son or daughter may make for next September. The current policy adversely impacts on young people from rural areas where the alternative of walking or cycling to college is not an option. Could the Chair please confirm how many young people from rural areas are not in education, employment or training, known as NEETs, and are there any instances where it is due to the family being unable to fund the cost of post-16 travel, and if so, what additional financial support is available so that college becomes a viable option? Thank you.
Would you like me to reply or Mr. Shaw?
I don't mind.
Would you like to?
Happy to, Chair, thank you. So in terms of the response has been published. If I just read the response for the committee, if that's acceptable. So in response to the question raised by Councillor Houghton, I can provide the following responses. We've been actively working over the last 12 months on how best to support young people and reduce the number who are NEET or not known across Shropshire, particularly following the closure of 2 school sixth forms in the southeast of the county, Albury Wells School and William Brook School. We are pleased to confirm that the numbers of young people who are NEET or not known are the lowest levels for many years. In terms of young people who are NEET or not known, Shropshire sits as the best of our statistical neighbours and performs really strongly compared to the national average. There is a table below. I can step through that table, but I think the most important highlight are compared to England, where NEET percentage is 3.64% and not known is 4.97%. Shropshire sits at 2.88% and 0.51% for not known, so we're well below. And you can see that the differences against our statistical neighbours as well. When we look at the combined figures, Shropshire has 3.39%, so that's 168 NEET and 30 young people that are not known, against a national figure of 8.64%, and statistical neighbours at 6.4%. We are positively bucking the trend nationally, and this is based on a cohort of around 7,000 young people across Shropshire. However, this data does hide an even more positive picture, as the data for Year 13 students, 93 of which are NEET and 26 not known, was much higher than Year 12, 75 NEET and 4 not known, due to legacy data issues. When we look at the split between North, Central and South Shropshire, the following themes emerge. This information is taken directly from the casework of our team of information, advice and guidance advisors, or our transition support workers, who note any reasons for NEETs in our monitoring system. So when we look at the South and South East, the reports show that there are around 26 NEET cases that have specific notes included. 6 of those have health issues, including mental health, and 5 have transport-related issues. In the North, there are no specific cases where transport has been expressed as a factor leading to NEET status. There are cases of mental health that could be linked as above. One factor worthy of note is that Coleg Cambria over in Wrexham, Cheshire Soutons and West College and Rees Heath College all provide free transport from certain areas of Shropshire. Within the central area, the central team had only one case related to transport. Mental health and travel times generally have been factors in leading to some demotivation for students, especially with diversions from a straight route to pick up smaller conurbations, leading to potential doubling of journey times. To help resolve some of these challenges and others, the transport team are exploring multi-operator ticketing schemes, but there are some challenges hindering its agreement and implementation. However, recent changes to enable local authorities to explore franchising bus services in their area would greatly assist resolving this challenge and is being explored actively. An annual bus pass is currently available for young people, with the costs and take-up of these offers outlined below. So currently, the present fee per year are the single journeys. These are capped at £2, rising to £3 in January. We have the annual pass, which is £933. 22 students have purchased this pass. There is also an annual pass of £299, where parents are in receipt for certain benefits. Only 7 students have purchased this pass. We are keen to understand why so few students from low-income households are taking up the reduced annual pass, despite such a huge saving, and we welcome your input in understanding the reasons for this. We are concerned that the 50% increase in the capped cost of bus travel, £2 cap rising to £3, will be a burden for many parents. It equates to around £10 per week, £40 per month, £400 per academic year. And we will be lobbying government for additional resources for Shropshire so we can reduce this burden through the implementation of our bus service improvement plan. Thank you, Chair.
Have a supplementary.
Yes, I do, Chair. Thank you. And thank you for a really comprehensive response. And it's really pleasing to see the low levels against the other local authorities around not in employment and not known. So that's really positive. But I do worry about the benefit threshold, and I'd be interested to know what those certain benefits are, whether families are supported to check their benefit eligibility, and if there's a phased payment option on that £299, because the feedback I'm getting is that families just don't have that sort of money in one go to buy it. Yeah, I'm sorry, that's 3 questions. I don't expect an answer to that.
If I take those away,
yes,
go out and just refund back. That's okay.
Yes, thank you very much. Thank you.
You circulate them to everybody.
Absolutely, yeah.
Yes.
Thank you. There is actually a post-16 transport task and finish group that meets where we discuss all these things. I believe your group does have a member on, but he didn't attend the last meeting. So perhaps you might want to attend in his place, Ruth, or something.
Thank you. The councillor wasn't able to attend last time, but he did raise the initial issue in council because of some issues around the Bridge North and changing buses and the costs. So it's probably appropriate that Councillor Williams continues.
Yeah, okay. It's just that, yes, you're perfectly right. He did raise the issues. And then he was unable to come to the meeting. But we have had other meetings. And they, you know, okay, thank you.
Can I just ask a question, please? To do with that. If you've got 3 children, that's a heck of a lot, isn't it? You know, it's going to £3.
You're going to get an answer off Mr. Shaw, aren't you?
Right.
Yeah. And it's coming to all of us, Viv. That's what I'm asking.
Complaints.
Yeah. All right. All right. So I'm going to hand over now to Laura to take us through the first paper, please.
Thank you, Chair. So just introducing myself again, I'm Laura Tyler, Assistant Director of Joint Commissioning. Just introducing to my right, Leslie Brown. She's our Service Manager and has responsibility for all age commissioning. Leslie's going to take us through a very quick slide, just a few slides, because I'm very conscious that the report was very long. So the report is as it says, it's on learning disability and autism development, which will include a bit around supported living. We have is quite a wide report for good reason, because it hits on so many different areas. So throughout the report, it talks about really kind of the local context, what we've been doing, trying to ensure from my perspective, getting my team up. So I've got a really robust commissioning support team to deliver this and other areas of our commissioning portfolio area. So Leslie will take you through that in terms of where we are with our thinking. We'll talk about some of the national policy and the directional travel that we need to be going in. Gives you a bit of an indication of overview and spend and actually where we are with that. And then talks about some of the things that we've been doing and also things that we want to be doing. So things that are on our work programme for the next 12 months or so. So I'm not going to take you through all of that. And Leslie's going to take you through. So we'll do a bit of a combined approach. We've also got operational colleagues. So over, you've met earlier, Amanda. So she's our link to the operational side of the business with adults. And again, I suspect there might be some children's bits that may come in from a daily perspective as well. So hope we've got the right people in the room to answer the questions. What we have done, just to point out, and again, I think on both actual reports today, is the committee were really clear with us last time that you wanted outcomes. So, okay, so what's the difference? So we've tried to do that bit throughout this report to give you some indication, some case studies and etc. So I'm hoping that helps kind of frame some of the work and some of the outcomes and that difference I'm starting to make. But I'm going to hand over to Leslie just to take you through a very brief presentation, and then give us enough time then hopefully for us to go through in some discussion around some of the context of the report. Thank you. Thank you, Laura. Thanks all. Good morning all. So I'm hoping to just take you through the slides, probably about 10-15 minutes of overview, and then we'll open up for any questions. So the first couple of slides before we get into the areas specific to learning disabilities and autism, talk about and reflect on the journey that we've been on as a commissioning function, Laura just alluded to. So we have recently adopted an all-age commissioning function model in our team. And that's been after some extensive work over the last 18 months, working with PwC as the transformation partner and building the case for that. Apologies, on the screen that's a little bit blurred even for me with my varifocals at the bottom. So the structure now allows us to have dedicated commissioning support, and we've structured the team around Startwell portfolio, which is kind of your 0 to 18, 25 age range, a LiveWell portfolio and an AgeWell portfolio. And very much our learning disabilities and autism population are very, very much aligned to our LiveWell team. We've got a couple of our team in attendance listening today, Louise and Kevin online. But we know that we've got an all-age responsibility and working with our children's colleagues operationally and into supporting people into their older age as well. The commissioning vision, we've reflected on areas that we needed to strengthen. So commissioning is a cycle of activity, from needs analysis to awarding service contracts, to monitoring the quality of the contracts, to kind of then repeating it all again. So the strengthening work that we've done around the team is not just around commissioning, but also contract management and quality assurance, and also how we
secure individual packages of care through our brokerage function as well. So that just explains a little bit about the structure in that all age context. This slide covers off some of the key priority areas. So on that journey, that 18 months of improvement and strengthening across our teams, we've made some clear declaration, I guess, about our vision and our strategy. We want to support Shropshire on the creation of comprehensive strategies to support a person through that all age life course. We'll reflect on how we're kicking off, the work that we're actively working on at the moment is to develop an autism strategy, which we don't yet have. Our strategic relationships with children and adults. So that all age approach allows us to really work with Natalie, with David, with Sonia in a holistic way on a person's life course through commissioning services. And I think that that's really showing us real opportunities now, so that people don't fall off a cliff at the age of 16 or 18 and our offers don't change drastically. We're working with our operational colleagues across that whole life course. The right capacity and capability has been really critical for us. We have added in posts into the team to strengthen our capacity, and we're seeing the benefit of that now. The team was fully recruited to at the end of October, so it's quite recent. We've been working hard on that in the last 6 months to right size the team. That parity, I've reflected on that, and then also just reflecting that further development of governance. We have a joint commissioning delivery group which Laura chairs, which oversees all decisions around our internal commission services, and we also work strategically across into the system through governance into the ICB as well, around health partnerships and decisions as well. Okay, thank you, Sophie. This slide just reflects a little bit as we start to now go into that learning disabilities, autism kind of area of spend and services and commissioning. This slide captures some of the adults' financial aspects. So from an adult's perspective, we spend a significant amount of the adults' budget and proportion of the budget around learning disabilities and autism. So about 57 million projected for this year. That is, it's significant. It's about a third of the adult spend, second largest category. However, there is some great news and some real positive improvements. So back in 2022, here benchmarking exercise was undertaken in partnership with the LGA, and we were an outlier. So Shropshire were an outlier. We were spending a lot of money relative to our peers on working experience in LDNA. At that point in time, we were the 17th highest. I think that was nationally out of the 150 odd councils at that point. Now, very recent information and intelligence indicates that actually we've really switched and reversed that position. It's something that we've been working really hard on to ensure that our value for money models are sustainable models, I guess. And we're really proud, I guess, of that, which then indicates that we are now not the 17th highest, we're 66th highest, so we're much more in line with where we'd hoped to be. Really positively, with the third lowest authority in our peer group. So this is a smaller group of authorities, 16 authorities in our kind of statistically similar grouping. So we're third lowest now for our long-term support spend and sixth lowest in terms of our long-term residential care spend around LD&A. So really reflective of some of those changes that we've made, operational and commissioning, working together hand in hand as a partnership.
Just to jump in on that as well, Leslie. I mean, I've sat here at the full committee, I think, probably a good 12, 18 months ago, talking about the commissioning agenda. And actually, it was one of the areas that we signalled at that time that we were going to focus on around the 18 to 64, because we knew we were an outlier, quite a significant outlier in terms of our cost and our benchmarking work. So it's actually really great to sit here in front of you again today and say, that has significantly improved, and we'll take you through that as we go through and some of the report. That is multiple different things that have contributed to that. It's no one silver bullet here. There are multiple different ways working closely with ops, changing our model and approach, thinking technology, all sorts of different things that we're doing to try and do that. But we can maybe pick that up a bit later. Sorry.
No. Thanks, Laura. Yeah, thank you. Sophie. This slide, to give that all age perspective, reflects on some of the financial aspects around children's and kind of the LD, where is our LDA population in our children's. Bit more challenging to pick out just the dedicated spend around LDA in children's, but we know that there is a significant part of the population supported by the high needs block funding that our young people would send, including those children with LD&A. And also the Disabled Children's Team and the finances related to that, again, a significant population within that DCT team supported who would have learning disabilities and autism. The total spend in those areas is 51.5. So you add that to the 57 in adults and the 51.5, although it's not the full total of that 51.5. It is, you know, I guess that's the message. We are very conscious of the significant proportion of our spend in the People's Directorate around this area. I think one thing I reflect on there is that we want to do more work so we get a better, more accurate position, and we're able to track and monitor the spend, the trends, particularly in the children's area, so that we can do that kind of same narrative as we've had in adults and be able to monitor the changes that we're making and understand where our population is in the population and how much the spend is aligned to them. So yeah, it's already kind of acknowledged and work underway. Thank you, Sophie. A couple of slides just reflecting on the future demand on services. I'm sure you know it's no surprise to members of committee and ourselves around the growing demand on services, the number in terms of people and the complexity that is increasing in terms of our services. Some stats there, you know, Mandy and I talk about a population of around 1,000 in adults that we support. But we can see there some of the growth from, you know, between 22 and 24, we've got about a 4% growth there. Just reflecting on some of the growth and the demand and the pressures that we're really, really conscious of in terms of children's numbers. Just picking up those last couple of bullet points in that slide, we know that our autism assessment pathway, we're seeing huge increases in that in terms of waiting lists, waiting times, and we know that that will start to then affect our services as social care as they come into our kind of remit. Waiting list for adults assessments with autism as well, a waiting list there of 2 to 3 years. And also detailed in the report, but not on the slide, is a reflection of where our education and healthcare plan numbers are up to. And again, seeing significant increases year on year, 89% increase between 22 and then 76% increase the following year up to 23. So we know that we will have significant challenges, but the response to that is that good quality commission services working in partnership, as we've seen, can help us respond to some of that demand. Okay, thank you, Sophie. Okay, yeah, Laura mentioned about outcomes and how we've, you know, woven in, hopefully, some really positive examples, and that offsets some of that challenging narrative around the demand. One of our outcome performance positives that we're really proud of is that we do perform really positively nationally with the number of people that we support to stay in their own home and be in a community setting, with a family setting, in a supported living setting. So the national target is 80.5% and we perform at 87.5%. So we're really proud of that, and that's been long-standing. Shropshire's been really positive about that. An example detailed within your report at the end is Emma. So Emma is living with a shared lives carer and a shared lives family. That's a model of support where many people, actually, we support about 30 people who have a learning disability or autism, will live with a shared lives carer, and they can support them on their journey really around their positive outcomes and what they want to achieve in life. Now, prior to moving into a shared life setting, Emma had a really difficult time. She was in a private rented accommodation. She was living a very unhealthy lifestyle. She was having difficulty managing her finances. She put on an awful lot of weight, bless her. The impact of her shared lives placement was that she lost 3.5 stone through healthy eating, to cooking with the family. She's showing off some of her new clothes there. She was really proud of that. And she also stopped drinking fizzy drinks. She was much more active and much more financially aware, which allowed her to save up, and she ultimately ended up, she went on a cruise, and she was really proud to tell us about that. It's given us permission to use her story. She's really proud of the changes that she's made and how Shared Lives has supported her through that. Oh, Chair, did you?
Sorry,
That's a question.
sorry, I was too busy reading.
No, that's all right. So, I've got a friend whose child is autistic, and they live in a house with 4 or 5 other people. I don't know how many houses you've got like this, but I think they're really, really good because they kind of share and adopt life skills and support one another. And it's really, really, I think it's worked really, really well. So you know, I was just wondering if you do much of that.
Yeah.
And somebody goes in, obviously, in to sort of, you know, keep an eye on them all. But they do, you know, they have, I think one of the things for everybody really is probably company, you know, is being lonely and on your own, whether you've got a disability or not. And I think that automatically almost gives you an extended family, and it really helps, you know, and they really, really like and enjoy that. So I just wondered if how many units we got like that, and whether it's something we were looking into.
Yeah, do you want me to pick that up?
Yeah.
No, in terms of a little bit of detail. Like, so that what you're describing there is our supported living model.
Yeah.
A really successful model we support, and that's why we perform really well nationally about accommodation and people supported in the community, because we do a lot of supported living. That model is exactly as you described, you know, peer support with a care and support package for the individuals in that setting. We have about 200 houses, supported living houses in Shropshire, supporting about 270 individuals. Some may be in there on their own, or some may be in a kind of a shared accommodation setting, as you described, 4, 5, 2, 3 people living together. And the compatibility is something that we work really closely with operational colleagues to make sure that compatibility is in place before people move into their accommodation.
So can I just ask, that must be quite a high percentage then, is it, of people living in shared accommodation? Is it? When you,
our total,
in the total
thousands population, it is, it's a significant part of our service model, particularly in adults. Absolutely.
And I think sometimes if people move into supported living at a slightly younger age, because otherwise if they're older, you know, I'm talking about in their 60s when they move, I think it's a really, really difficult transition. But actually, if you move into shared accommodation when you're younger, I think you get a lot more out of it.
I think it's a really good, just coming on that, sorry, just it's a really good point there. And I think that we get challenged with that actually quite a lot, because, you know, and again, we've talked about it previously, haven't we, with carers that are aging, carers who have got, you know, with a learning disability at home, and, you know, and think, you know, they worry about what the next step is. So part of what we're trying to do around that development, around that supported living, is understand, okay, what are the choices here? Because they will range in terms of support. So you've got your, you know, you kind of, you can go and live in accommodation and have a bit of support going in, very minimal support. You could have a shared life scheme where you could go and live with it in a family support, where you may stay there, or actually you may get skills that you can then transition to your independent living. Or you've got, you know, your kind of your shared accommodations with 6 hours support, 24 hours support, technology. So what we're trying to do is to offer that array of choice, isn't it, and support across, depending on people, and people will dip in and out depending upon where they are within their own, their kind of life, you know, time. You know, as teenagers, you know, I certainly know my son doesn't know how to use the washing machine, like, you know, but I'm getting there with the daughter. But it's about that though, isn't it? We need to learn, everybody needs to learn these skills, you know, unless you've been told or shown something. So it's thinking about how do we enable people to live the best lives that they want to do. And again, you'll see in the report around, that connection to the low numbers that go into residential care. 18 to 65, we really try and keep low. The only time that we're seeing potentially that's starting to tip over, and I know, Natalie, we've had conversations with SLT as a team, haven't we, around this, is where you've got maybe an Asian person with a learning disability. So they might still just be under that, that 60 category, but they're not able to cope in a different environment. So we're starting to see that increase slightly, not hugely. But when people go into a residential or nursing home setting, the way that it's set up is that pretty much the money is taken off them, so they don't, because all their needs are met within that accommodation. But with supported living, 18 to 65, they want to go to the cinema, don't they? They want to be able to work, so it's a different setup. So that's one of the things, don't we really try and support people to remain in the community, to have as little or as much support. Obviously we're thinking about the cost of that, as we've just described earlier, thinking about how we do that in the most cost effective way. Sorry, just.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
Yeah, and it's a friend of mine's brother, and of course, because he didn't go into shared accommodation at a younger age, he's now got to 60, and he's not really capable of entering that. So his only option is sort of care home situation, and that's going to be very traumatic, because up until then his mum looked after him. But so I think if people can move, because 30, 40, they pick up these life skills and they end up with a much better quality of life than if later on they just can't do it. Sorry, Dave.
That's all right.
That's good. Can I say I'm that age now? When I was younger and I used to go singing, used to go to mental health care places and sing. And a lot of these people were put into mental health care because their parents had died. I read this with great interest. We have a wonderful group, Hands Together Ludlow in South Shropshire. But we do have now, quite a few of them are getting older. I know them all. They all come, Mrs. Parry this, Mrs. Parry that. But I wondered, we had a couple years and years ago that it said exactly what you've put down here. They wanted to have the ability to know that their two boys, they have two children, exactly the same, that they were going to have something like this, where they were going to a residential accommodation. Now the father's died last year and the mother isn't over well. They won't be pressurised to do this, will they? So, and that was my question. Reading through it, I wondered, I thought, is this making it a way that it's cheaper for the council for them to go into residential care? Will you find that it's not as expensive to pay for individual people in their own homes to go into residential care? I'm sorry, it's just me. It's my mind works around.
Pick up on that. So
yes.
So there's a few different aspects of kind of comment there.
Yeah.
So in terms of the financial model, there are aspects of supported living that are very, very expensive. So we're learning about that and we're understanding that. So if you have a single service accommodation where one person lives in supported living in a very remote setting and we struggle to get care agencies to support that, that's a really expensive model. So we want to reduce the amount of single service.
Yes, but you are reduced. You want to reduce.
Yeah, absolutely. So, but we want those models to be really appropriate, informed by operational and support plan assessments, and be really right for an individual. Yes. Because otherwise they won't work. They fail. They will fail. So it's not in our interest to put somebody and support them into a supported living setting if it's not right for them. And like to.
Can I just say that I've found other things where people are being pressurised to move to places where they don't want to live and they don't know anybody. I really would like it that if you were going to have, please don't put them all in Shrewsbury, as I read. I would like it to be South Shropshire that has these places as well, because they are the groups that they go to, they know them all. They're really good friends. So if you do that and you move into Albrighton or Oswestry, as some of my older people are being asked to move because they can't find accommodation, then that is the wrong thing to do, I'm sorry.
No,
And I just wanted to say that, if you don't mind.
no, I think that's a fair challenge to raise with us, and we do. So again, in the report, we talk about some of our strategic planning, about our plans for the next 2, 5, 10, 15 years. And we recognise that we need more provision in our local, more rural communities. And we've been working with the Housing Min to undertake that strategic planning. We've got the first draft of their report, and they're telling us that actually how many more supported living settings we would need to establish in our rural community.
And you're going to come back regularly with that?
Yeah, of course, we'd be to come back.
It's just that I was fearful when I read it. I thought,
Yeah,
you know, I know all these people. My husband and I have been singing long times in show business. And when we lived in Morecambe, the kids used to shout, "Hello, Mrs. Barry."
Yeah.
So I've gone all those years with meeting people who I don't think are different. For me, they're just loving and caring. So if you take what they've got away from them, then it's bad.
Yeah.
Sorry about that.
No, it's fine, but yeah.
Just one more comment.
Thank you. Thank you.
Oh, sorry.
Just to wrap up a comment.
I'll just kind of respond into some of those points around music and trying to get people engaged, and that's exactly what the music service are doing, linking in with commissioning and other colleagues actually. So I think you're absolutely right. It's a really good way of keeping them engaged, positive and active. So there's that work going on.
I've been all over the country and singing these places.
You know it well there.
They love music. They love to get up and sing.
And I think there's another aspect, as Leslie described, it's how do we get that type of expectation and conversation going much earlier. So when young people are in some of our special schools, so for example, 7-day and others, are we having those conversations? And I don't think we have always previously, but those conversations are starting now. Again, so we can join up that preparation for adulthood before they become adults. And it's that connection into what's post-16 going to look like, what type of provision's going to be there for you, how are you going to move around, how are you going to engage and be active. And if we look at Kieran as a really good example, so Kieran works in our office of the chief exec, does some fantastic work. And he travels from Oswestry, into the office. He's able, moving around. He didn't have a brilliant education and career, and he's able to share some of the challenges, and that's what we've been using to work on really, to address some of those barriers that young people like Kieran and others are telling us. So I just want to make the point that this is, I know we're talking to some older adults, but we are looking at this all the way through from 14, 15 onwards really, to make sure that connection's strong.
Good. Thank you.
Thank you.
Councillor Pardy.
Oh, apologies.
Okay. Emma live in shared lives. Is that classified as living in her own home? Is that what you're saying?
It will.
Yes, yeah, it's like
Yeah.
that's right.
Thank you very much, Chair, and really pleasing report. It's like bread and butter to me, actually. This is great stuff. I'm really pleased to see the numbers increasing of people with a learning disability living independently. And I need to be sort of careful how I ask my question when I declare my declaration. But there's a couple of questions. Page 14 relates to children's providers, and given the recent press around the level of profit that private providers are making out of children's services, so I'd like some reassurance that is continually monitored and the quality is monitored for those children and young people, and it's not at the expense of, they're not placed at the expense of providers' profit, because we know they're incredibly expensive. So I'd like some information on that. And I'm concerned around the 18 months to 2-year wait for assessments, and 2 to 3 years for adults waiting for assessment, and what support is providing to informal and family carers during that time, and do any of those come into services through a crisis within the household, which perhaps leads to them being placed in short-term residential or higher cost placements?
Yeah, I was just wondering if there's probably just about another 2 or 3 slides.
Oh, sorry, I thought we've
got excited about.
My thoughts. I thought she picked it up.
So, I don't know if it, because that might answer some of your question, I guess, or give you a bit more context before we then kind of come to a more detailed answer. Is that helpful? Yeah. And so I'll just finish off really quickly. David picked up Kieran. We wanted to celebrate Kieran as a really positive example somebody who's in supported employment. And again, that's a really positive area that we are performing above that England target of 5%. So we've got 7.2% of our adults who have a learning disability in paid employment. So really celebrating that.
And again, I think that's that close connection we've got Enable. So our Enable team are part of the local authority. They are exceptional, and actually, I think it would be maybe useful in the future, maybe to get a bit of an overview of what Enable do, because it's vast and doing some fantastic work with very, vulnerable individuals, getting them into employment and education. So it might be something to about, but I think it's a real benefit of us having Enable, and you can see the difference, I think, in the authorities.
Absolutely, yeah. So yeah, we can't overlook, I guess, the financial pressures, and it relates to some of, I guess, what you're flagging, Councillor Horton, in terms of profit with care agencies and scrutinising that and challenging that. We, internally, our own budgets are under that increasing demand for services, complexity and needs of individuals. That's an added factor, increasing service costs in terms of costs from the market. We know that providers are telling us that the rates paid by the council are not keeping up with their own cost increases. The autumn budget announcements around national living wage, national insurance rises, on top of ongoing concerns from providers around fuel costs, insurance, and the complexity of what we're commissioning. So it's very much a wicked issue, really balancing that the cost of care, the demands that we're experiencing, and continuing to meet needs in terms of our service provision.
It might just be worth and important to note at this point, again, counting your question around the children's element, it's a very different market, I think, and I think just to recognise that profit around children's, it's not the same market that I think we have in Shropshire. We've got a very local homegrown market in Shropshire, so that when I wouldn't want all of the providers to be kind of people thinking that they're all in for profit and they're making huge profit margins, because we know they're not. And I think we just want to reflect that there are, and actually the balancing and how we manage that market, which we'll come on to when we get through slides, is very different for us commissioners. So the conversations are very different. The challenges might be very different depending upon who we are commissioning with. I just want to make sure that distinction's there, because I wouldn't want people to go away with the assumption that in this meeting that all providers are making huge profits, because that they are certainly are not. So just to make that point, sorry.
Yeah, no, that's helpful, thank you. Okay, thanks, Sophie. Just reflecting on some of our progress that we've made, we've probably touched on many of these examples. We've talked about supported accommodation strategic planning, and we can certainly bring that back for further discussion with committee. On new supported living accommodations, there's another example as one of your case studies, a different example there. Autism strategy development, so again, this is around us being more future informed and having clear priorities as we move forward around our autism kind of commissioning needs and operational needs. So we have kicked off 5 work streams. We've got a dedicated commissioning officer who's leading on the autism strategy development. She's really reaching out far and wide at the moment. She's got some really positive work streams developing there. And again, we'll be excited to bring that forward. We're hoping to have that strategy in place by September next year. Day opportunities, you reflected around Hands Together Ludlow, and you've reflected on the importance of day opportunities as a model of support, as well, in addition to things like shared lives, accommodation-based support options as well. So, we are fortunate to have a wealth of opportunities in Shropshire, but we know that needs and preferences change over time for our communities. So we're looking at our day opportunities to make sure that they are fit for purpose and we've got the right opportunities in place. And again, that rural challenge and accessibility, again, part of that. Market engagement and our improvement, we're probably building on what Laura was just reflecting on. We have regular provider forums, particularly with our adults providers, and we want to strengthen and build that and put that in place for our children's providers, again, as part of that all-age approach. The market want to know how they can work with us. They want to talk to us more frequently. They want to understand who they go to for certain queries. So that is part of our plans for this year and ongoing, building on what we do already. Our services, again, just to reflect on our commitment to continual improvement really across our services, working with providers and also with some of those services that we've mentioned that are in-house services as well. For example, we have a mixture of day opportunities that are externally commissioned and some that are delivered as in-house services as well. So yeah, that commitment there to continuous improvement is across all of our work. Okay. I think, oh yeah, technology enabled care is probably an area where we haven't talked about in detail. As Laura mentioned early on, we've got a real positive strength, and we're one of the kind of front runners really as a local authority area around our adoption of technology enabled care, particularly to support our learning disability and autism communities. We've got tech in supported living settings, we've got tech in some of our home settings. We want to roll that out more. We've got a great team in the Office of the Chief Exec who are trialling and working with providers around this. We've got virtual care. So yeah, absolutely. Yeah, step down services as well. So that is again an aspirational growth area for us. And I think it probably has been one of those contributing factors in terms of our control of costs as well previously. You've got some more details in the appendix D in the report on that. And then another area of kind of future development is in our adults operations areas. I don't know if Natalie or Mandy wanted to say a couple of words about our future aspirations around an LDA team as well. Sorry.
Sorry, we've gone from none to lots of things. Yeah, so this year, we were really excited. I think we've talked to you about this before, that we were going to look at the operational service development in this area as well as the commissioning and development in this area. So we're looking at a learning disability team. We've had some staff move into that team already, and staff will migrate over between now and the end of the financial year. This is an area operationally that we haven't come from a bad place, actually. You know, if you look at some of our statistics around supporting people at home and employment, they've been very good. But what we know, and from listening to customers and through listening to partners, is that, you know, a streamlined approach where we've really got that focus piece. We're looking at that earlier intervention, and in the performance report, we'll go on to talk about the transitions and the preparing for adulthood. The earlier we can get in, we can set goals, we can think about that independent living, we can work with families. So it enables us to do a much more focused piece of work, whereas at the moment, this group are supported across our service. So that could be our community social work teams, it could be mental health, it could be preparing for adulthood. So we really want to see what's the breadth of opportunity within this, and we're able to do that at the right time while we're looking at things like the supported living model, and really thinking about how that operational intelligence can inform the commissioning strategy going forward. So it's very much in progress, and we'll come back and we'll talk to you about, you know, impact and what we're finding from outcomes from that team. But it's really, really good timing to do the two together. I don't know whether Mandy, do you want to say anything further?
No, just in addition that we've got a mobilisation plan, work streams to support that going over, that focuses on individuals, carers and the team that are going to be supporting. It will join the preparation for adulthood team, so it makes that pathway for the individual and the carer more streamlined.
Yeah. I think for us as a commissioning function as well, we really welcome that development, because I think it gives us and my team, you know, direct contact and named individuals and workers to really then shape the commission service plan around them. Right, you'll be really glad to hear that I think we're on to the last slide now. Apologies, very over-ambitious to say 15 minutes, but I think it's been a good debate. This is just a summary of our future commissioning plans. We talked to the market about our intentions through our market position statement, so that was published and refreshed earlier this year. I'm talking about supported accommodation, market engagement, We are also looking to review and strengthen our respite offer, and that will support individuals and families and carers across all age. So we're doing work on short breaks for children and young people, and looking at our respite offer for adults as well. So that's really helpful to have that working at the same time. In our plan is to look at what support we have in place for unpaid carers and to listen to their feedback and to look at areas that we may need to strengthen. Strategy development, we've got the autism strategy work underway, but do we need to explore what we have in place for learning disabilities as well, or neurodiversity more generally? What does that look like with our system partners as well? So that's on the list for this year. And then, as mentioned earlier, I think data, financial reporting, monitoring, again, another area in terms of our future plan. So I think that's it. Okay, so thank you for your time.
Can we come back to the questions?
Yeah.
So, yeah, that's okay. So if I take, shall I take children's placements bit first and then I'll be waiting. So in terms of, yeah, so obviously many people would have seen in the press recently that there's been a report around children's providers in terms of the large profit organisations, etc. And I think the question, Council, which is it's a good challenge, is how do we assume and look at that, make sure it's efficient, cost effective and efficient. So that is part of what we were saying right at the beginning, is that we are pulling all of that, all the all-age commissioning function together in terms of contractual and quality monitoring. So we have bolstered additional capacity to do that. So we are at the moment developing our quality assurance framework and our contractual framework as well. So we're developing a toolkit around how we were going to be monitoring contracts, whether they are high risk in terms of actually there isn't a large market area, or they're high risk in terms of we spend quite a large amount with them. They could be high risk because they are very niche providers in terms of providing very complex care. So it's developing our risk assessment toolkit along those lines. And then we've got quality officers that will go out and check and challenge on how individuals are receiving care. And we're looking at how that feedback loop from the person themselves, as well as the family member, the carer, as well as the provider. So that is a massive piece of work that we're currently developing. But with that additional capacity that we talked about at the beginning, that's starting to help. And that includes our brokerage function of our all-age approach as well. And also the additional capacity with the children's commissioning bit is really good now. So we've got, as we said at the beginning, we've got Start Well portfolio area. We never had that. We didn't have children's commissioners here. It's incredible that they've been able to do with to take, but I have to say it's making such a difference, because it's that ongoing conversation with our providers, trying to grow that local market in particular, because we know a lot of the children's providers are large national organisations, but we do have a large proportion of homes here as well. Part of the decisions around, that have been already made around, do we build our own children's homes, residential homes as an example? Do we think we need to develop that? These are the ongoing conversations that we will be having with children's, looking at that demand and looking at, and obviously the placement officers will be negotiating and will be going out to multiple different providers to see if they'll take those placements. And in addition to that, for children's, we are also part of the West Mids framework. So there are several frameworks that all local authorities are joined up to, and we all so it's helpful because that's centrally negotiated in terms of uplifts on an annual basis. It means as local authorities, we're not dealing with multiple different conversations and trying to pitch each other against one another, because the framework is, that is one framework, one contract, terms, conditions that they have to adhere to, and it's within a price range, and it's, like I said, negotiated fee uplift every year on those as well. So multiple different ways, I think, Councillor, is what I'm saying, we're trying to manage it. But I have to say it's still very challenging. I wouldn't sit here and say it isn't. It is exceptionally challenging, because that demand is there. That demand is there across all local authorities. So it's incredibly challenging. And then I'm going to hand it to you, but wait for you.
No, well, I think it's probably a seamless transition, because similarly, as you described for residential special type placement, we have the same for education placements. So there's a West Midlands framework around independent special school placements. And again, the quest to come centrally, the West Midlands group around that. You sit on that, the commissioning group that's part of that work. We've also recently, from September 24, introduced education quality advisors that I reference in the performance report. Their sole raison d'etre is to really focus on the quality of mainstream into special, into hubs and into independent, where we need to explore that view. And that's across SEND and AP. And actually, we've never had that. And that's a cross-phase function from early years, statutory school relation to post-16. So that interconnectivity in terms of residential and education is really important. So we're strengthening all of that work. That helps us then to be assured around the question, Councillor Horton, that you asked around what's the efficient use of resources, what's the financial value, and are children and people achieving good outcomes. That helps us really to get into that space and provide challenge when we feel they're not. And I'll be honest, even since September, the education quality advisors have completed various visits, and they provided both support and challenge to a number of providers in the special school sector, independent sector and mainstream sector. And that's good. Most of those colleagues have received that well and are wanting that type of feedback and development opportunity. Some less so, but we're working on those. In terms specifically around waiting lists, I know the comment was around the 18-month type wait for autism assessments, which is correct. So just to put a bit of context around that, we receive through BU a monthly update from them around their waiting times across a range of indicators. That's then reported to the SEND and AP Partnership Board. The ICB do various quality checks with commissioners as well around that. I think contextually, it's important to understand there's around 200 referrals received every month for ND type assessments, whether that's ADHD, autism, etc., which is a huge increase. It talks to the figures that Leslie's shared. So that 8 week is not where we want it to be. We want it to be less than 26 weeks. That's the focus. But if we look at the other areas, there has been some significant improvement. So if we wind back to March 24, the average waits for routine mental health assessments, the target was around between 4 and 6 weeks. Waits were running at 36 weeks. Then now, based on the data for September, down to less than 10, down to 9, which is a massive improvement. And they're continuing to focus on that delivery. We're seeing mental health treatment times. We want them within 18 weeks. They're just 23 weeks at the minute, coming down from 37 weeks in March 24. Assessments have gone up. They were around 55 weeks. They've gone to 82 because of the increase in demand. ADHD assessments have interestingly done a bit of a up and down. They were around 29 weeks back in March. We want them to be 18. We hit the 18 mark in August, but they jumped up to 30 again because of demand. And that's on the back of significant investment in recruitment and partnership working across the team. So some of the commissioning functions that Leslie described there, that those colleagues are directly involved in this type of work. That obviously has a huge impact and challenges around our work with education providers in schools. But I think the other important point to mention is, whilst this is waiting times, there is a lot of support for children and people, regardless of their diagnostic status, as you were. It's actually very much a needs-led provision. And we can bring back to this committee, if it would be helpful, some work that the ND practitioners, the neurodevelopmental practitioners, have been doing with schools and settings. This was a pilot that we introduced earlier in the year, where 3 colleagues, 3 NDPs, as we call them, have been working with schools and settings and families and young people. And the feedback has been absolutely phenomenal from young people, from families, from schools. That it's a pilot project. We've been able to extend that until the end of the financial year through a various different range of options. We're looking to secure recurrent funding to bring those into a permanent operation. So we can bring that back to you in the new year. But that's a really, really positive, not led approach.
Very much. Really comprehensive answers. Do we know why the increase in autism referrals are?
The answer to that one.
Raising awareness, isn't it? I think, at multiple different. It's interesting, but no, it's a good. We just don't
Really
know.
good question.
Yeah.
Cat out and There was a BBC article about 2 or 3 months ago, just for the summer, asking exactly that, and various different specialists, clinical, non-clinical, educational, social, they commented on it. And when you look, it really is. It's you can't put one particular reason. It's multifaceted.
You can have a local authority.
Yes.
Councillor as well, I think.
It's a wider societal.
Can I just ask, what percentage of people who have assessments are actually autistic? You know, is it because, you know, I mean, lockdown's got a lot to answer for. Is it because people have had concerns and they want to find out, you know, and 50% of the kids are fine? What are those percentages?
I would have to take that away. I'll come back to you rather than just give you a response. But I think we've got that for education and care plans, and that's quite interesting. I think that's it's not as high as you would think. Speech and language, it looks far higher, and we're seeing through some of the work that's coming through most recently with the early language support for every child programme, a much higher, a really quite complex needs where we're considering the needs of all children in a full year group, and lots of them are coming back with really quite significant needs. And I think your comment around lockdown is absolutely right. It's massive at the minute, and other colleagues will have seen that, I think, as well.
Duncan?
Yeah, generally with your indulgence, I like to educate Natalie who know about this because I think it might have implications on other cases. So this is the couple in my ward who approached me. They have a daughter in their 30s who's Down syndrome. And this is what they said. They understand from my daughter's social worker that there needs to be somewhere for her to share with before a house can be purchased and a care package put in place. The daughter lives in at the moment. They say the problem is I have no way of knowing about any other parents also seeking support and living in the Oswestry area, making it almost impossible to find a house share companion. And from the correspondence they've given me, it seems that we've been not able to facilitate a meeting by inviting other people. Clearly, we can't share addresses, I appreciate that, but we can actually invite everybody to come to a coffee morning and book a place for that to happen. But it doesn't seem that that's happening. And so this case goes on, and I think it's been several years, and it looks like a long wait for them. So just trying to understand, can't we do better? It does seem to be that we've just tripped ourselves up on a fairly small-scale operational issue. It's got profound impact on this family. So I just wanted to hear your views on it.
Yeah, I think this is one of the reasons why we're really keen to progress our learning disability team this year, and do that in alignment with what's happening in commissioning, because it's really important, obviously, when we move people in together, that we really think about their needs and how that's going to work, and that we put the right planning in place to try and give it the best possible chance that we can, and to put the right support in place. But also, there's a lot of people that we support that if we bring that together and we streamline that approach, that people, they know who they're working with and talking to each other more. Actually, I'm working with a young man that might live, you know, has got similar needs. Actually, we can put a similar support package in place. We think that that's got a really good chance of working out, and that's it's really sort of timely to pick up on that point, because that is one of the ambitions of having a team. We know that we're getting good outcomes already in that, but actually it's these sorts of areas that are quite complex. Actually, it's really not straightforward where we're just supporting people and they move in together and they have very, very complex needs. But actually, if you think about that case sharing information and how we're pulling that all together in one place, working with Leslie's team as well to think about that matching and getting it right, because it's equally really, really distressing for families and parents when that doesn't work out, or, you know. So we've got to be able to make the right plans in place, and I'm very optimistic actually that this new approach, bringing those workers together, they're able to talk about people and how they can match effectively, that hopefully it might start to really pick up that robust response to that, because we absolutely recognise and understand how important this is for families and people accessing our services. And hopefully when we come back and kind of update on this, we can touch upon some of these points and say, actually, is it making a difference? How are we capturing that and how are we measuring that? So yeah, I think it's all part of why we're doing what we're doing in this area and why it's been a priority for us this year.
Leslie, do you want to come in?
Yeah, just to, I think that's a helpful comment, although it's a frustrating scenario for your ward member and their family. Some of the work that we're doing is around developing some stronger, better communication for families and individuals and people who are contemplating that supported living option, working with colleagues to create easy read options as well. So I think that comment about the frustration and not knowing what's happening, I think we can look into that and strengthen that and respond to that.
Duncan, can I suggest that you contact one of these young ladies to be.
Yeah, I've already been in contact. I've already had correspondence. I thank you for your full response. I just think you've got parents who are willing to be part of the solution, it seems to me, and want to actually do more and just can't find a way of doing that. And that seems to me we're just lacking if we can't facilitate that. And I do appreciate it's not easy, and there's maybe lots of other issues that I'm not aware of because I've only told what I'm told. And I do get all of that. But I'm just thinking there may be other cases where we need to find a model where we can support parents who want to be a proactive step in finding the right solution for their children. Just not quite getting there at the moment, it seems. That's it.
Just very quickly, Chair, on it, because I think, and I wonder whether, you just got me thinking, I wonder whether one of the challenges and one of the things that we could do is maybe have, because I've obviously got the carers team as well under my portfolio, is thinking about how do we make those connections across carers, in parent carers, because I think, if we can do something, as you're describing, counsellor, where we can bring more people together to say, actually, my daughter, my son's probably ready to go, I'm struggling to care for them now, or, they're ready to step out. I think we can maybe, if we can link maybe Leslie's team and ops team into the carers, we'll have to think about how we do that as well, because I think you raise a really good point.
Yeah.
Okay. I just wanted to talk around the budget and your team, the learning disability and autism team. Are you overspent or underspent currently on budget? I've got a couple of questions, but that's the first.
Yeah, so it's probably one for Laura and Natalie to probably respond. But in terms of us as a commissioning team, so we commission services almost against the operational budget. So we don't hold the budget ourselves. If you see, we facilitate that process of kind of commissioning against be it children's budgets or adults' budgets, etc. So that's almost the budget dynamic for us. Obviously, we scrutinise, we want that value for money, we want to explore models where we've got financial sustainability in mind, but also protect the outcomes and positive outcomes of individuals as well.
Do you have a rough feel? Are you on target?
I could probably, it's probably, it sounds, it shouldn't be complex, but probably more complex than it is, and I'll probably explain it in a much very complicated way now. So we've obviously got from a People's Directorate, we've got our saving targets. So we're on trajectory to meet all of the saving targets, which you'll be aware they're quite significant high saving targets attached to those. So we're really proud of the way that we've been able to transform and do things differently and improve outcomes from that perspective. So part of those savings, the one element of the savings are more what we recognise as more organisational savings. And so we've got an element of that which is probably about about 3 million at the moment. If we didn't have that just little element of the organisational saving bit, we'd be pretty much bang on budget from an adult's perspective. And it's interesting. I mean, we were looking at the previous Q2 report that we presented. We were at that point over 10 million overspent. So I think, bearing in mind significant saving targets that we've got, the fact that we're on target to do those and pretty much come on budget is pretty significant and impressive, I have to say, from the team's perspective, and we're very proud.
We're very proud of that, and I think if you think of previous sessions and what we've talked about today, clearly the actions that we're taking, we're starting to see that impact. So in the past we talked to you about reablement. Today we've talked to you about not just looking at an area in learning disability. We've decided to go big bang and look at operational and commissioning at the same time. We know that within this particular area, the national picture it tends to be smaller numbers of people that we support, but the level of complexity is high, so that's where you tend to see the high cost. But by some of the actions that we're seeing, we are we would have been coming in on budget this year, which is huge for us if you think about our demands. So really by targeting the right areas, thinking about transformation, thinking about outcomes, it might sound like a cliche, but actually you always hit the where you want to go with it, really, because it's improving independence, it's looking at goal setting, etc. So there's still work to do in this area. We wouldn't be targeting this area if there wasn't, but we are starting to see some of those things come into fruition now.
Can I ask the supplementary question then? Is looking at the presentation, and you were referring to the fact, roughly speaking, about a 4% increase, am I right, year on year? And then if you add to that, you've got, and from your slide, wages obviously going up, national insurance, fuel costs, insurance costs, increased complexity, and your providers seem to be absorbing that at the moment, but they can only do that for a period. So you seem to be, in my mind, heading for a little bit of a perfect storm here, because you've got a 4% increase in clients, and you've got pretty well all elements going up in terms of costs. So if you looked at, say, the budget next year, you're probably looking at a 6 to 7% increase. I've just done the maths. How are you going to cope with that, with us being so short on money?
I think it's a really good challenge, Councillor, and to be honest, I think it's a year-on-year challenge that we do have, if I'm honest. So that's why it's really important what we're describing here is doing things differently. So actually, does somebody need 24-hour support in a home? Probably not. They may not, but how do we do it much more cost effective? So Leslie's talking earlier on about, maybe shared accommodation, or where we've got area, multiple self-contained units in one area, so we can do it. And so we've got somebody maybe on site that facilitates a wider cohort, for an example, using technologies we've been describing to reduce the need for people to go out, so it's far more cost effective. So there's a lot of things that we're trying to do to change the way that we're delivering services that will still support people within their own homes. So that's one element of that. What we have done, certainly over the few years that I've been here, I've taken a bit of a different approach with the market, and in terms of fee uplift, and I've not given necessarily a blanket uplift across the market. Our Care Act duty is about managing the market and making sure it's diverse and it's got choice and control. So part of what we do as commissioners is understand where the demand's coming through, where the challenges are, and what we're going to do about it. So not last April, but the previous April, for example, we gave a 12% increase on domiciliary care because we could see that's where the challenge was. So we took that decision and did that. It worked. This April, we could see where the challenges were, and it was with the learning disability provider market. So what we did is we put the rates all over the place, historic rates that have been put in place. So we basically wanted to put everybody on, stabilise that market. So we put a big investment in that area. And to be honest, we'll probably take maybe that approach next year as well, where we're trying to manage the market, and we've got to look at it from what are we already paying? So we benchmark. Where are the demands? So making sure we've got that in the future. Where are we seeing those challenges and those handbacks potentially? And so we've got to stabilise that market, and we have to make different decisions on that. So I think what I'd be saying to you all as members, that you will see that year on year, and I think that is, from a commission perspective, I feel that is the right thing to do. I've got to ensure that I stabilise the market with the money that we've got available, because we don't have endless amounts of money. And then what we're trying to do with the market, for example, with the domiciliary care at the moment, they're working with us on the technology to look at what they can put in place. So can we support them to do things in a much more cost efficient and effective way? So multiple different ways to try and do this and manage the market, which is challenging. And I really feel for providers when they're sat in front of us, but we're trying to manage it. But the markets, as we were talking earlier, are very different and do have different challenges to a certain extent. So you've got your base challenges we described there, but they are different, and so we've got to manage them differently, is my view.
Just to add to that, absolutely, it's really complex. We feel like we're using the levers that we have to control those costs and to manage that expectation. And another aspect is also how we're working on our housing strategic planning, working much more closely with our place colleagues and our housing department, and also Star Housing is the arm's length management organisation, to see how they can help us with that, almost the demand and the supply of future supported accommodation solutions through Star Housing rather than just the open market as well.
Okay. Hilary?
Thank you, Chair. I just want to stretch a little bit more on what Ruth was saying about the waiting list. So the adult waiting assessment time is 18 months, 2 years. But I might be wrong here, but if you're autistic, are you not autistic as a child as well as an adult? So what I want to understand from you is, why were these adults missed when they were children? Because if we had caught them when they were children, we would be saving a lot of money now when they're adults, because we would have had their support in place at an earlier age. So I'd just like to have some sort of understanding on that, please.
I mean, as you might have used this as well, David.
Yeah.
Again, it's a good question, and I think some of it is due to the fact that people weren't aware. They generally weren't aware of autism as much as they are now. I mean, it's very much in social media. It's very much on TV and programs. There's, I have to say, I don't remember it, or if you'd said that word as a child, when I was younger, I wouldn't have understood it or known about it. I do feel that it's very, it's interesting. I for those who've got teenagers, they are very aware of mental health. They are very aware of these things now, compared to, I think, because of probably a lot of it is social media compared to where we were younger. And that's not saying that is the only reason. I expect there might be multiple reasons to be honest, councillor, but that would be, it's a conversation that we've had around the awareness raising is far much more now than it ever has been. But I don't know what you think, David.
Forward, would you say then that we're going to be catching more of these children? We're definitely catching, so we'll be having less adults being diagnosed.
I suspect that will be exactly that. Yeah.
I think you're always going to have some, because this is a choice at the end of the day. So for young people, that choice may be parental, there may be advice from schools, etc. But a lot of this comes down to a choice. So many families still now, there may be traits or behaviours that perhaps indicate that a child may have one of the diverse traits, whether it's autism, ADHD, etc. But it's not a necessity, and I think we've got to be careful that we don't get into a society as trying to overdiagnose, and therefore thinking the diagnosis is going to solve the challenge. Because when a young person or an adult walks out of there, for an adult it can be different. I've got friends of mine that are my age, never been diagnosed, and for them they feel really positive, that they understand themselves more, and they share that with. But that's not always the case. I've got equally colleagues that have said, I don't want that. That's not what I want for me. And you can reflect back. Ofsted did a report on this a number of years ago in terms of overdiagnosis of SEND within the system. Interesting, some of the media that's coming out nationally from very different people that have been appointed to roles around reviewing this. There's almost underlying prevalence of, there must be a challenge. You're not quite learning about it, you must have SEND. Well, actually, is it that, or is it that you're finding that particular part of the curriculum really difficult? Because we're all different. And I think there's something just unpicking that a bit further, which talks to why we're seeing this 100% increase. That's phenomenal. We're not seeing that in any other part of the system. So I agree with lots of what the person said, but I would caution that, are we moving towards an overdiagnosis position? And actually, is that going to help?
The adults that are being diagnosed with autism are also costing us a lot of money because of the care talking. So I'm not talking about what I would say the borderline. I'm talking.
Yeah.
I'm thinking more of the more severe cases of which.
Yeah, I was going to say, 'cause it's a really good point, because obviously people, with autism don't necessarily have transport needs, and I think that's really important to point out, because we know the spectrum is vast, and I've got friends who are autistic, who don't have. It's just, and I think part of them wanting to, as you're saying, David, is some people want to know, they want to understand, why do I feel that bit different? Why, but others don't, and that's okay. So I think there is that. Just we have got to be. It's that there's a line, isn't there? But you're absolutely right. I think those with severe autism who do need care and support, that is where we as commissioners are coming in now, going, okay, what does that look like? And how do we ensure that lifelong cycle? Because as you quite rightly say, they're going to have these children all the way through. So what does that look like from a commissioning and from a model perspective for our communities?
Because if you want them as children, you can give them those. It's far easier for them to learn the coping strategies and the way to manage that than they will if they've just sort of gone through school, probably been excluded and all kinds of behavioural things being thrown at them. And then as they get diagnosed as being autistic, well, they've probably had a pretty awful childhood.
And some of what you're describing there, I mean, I won't go into this, but we've got examples where that's been the case, and the work that the ND practitioners have and are doing now is helping a young person or a child and their family, actually, and the education setting just understand that young person. And I think as a society, it's only 3 years since we've had a national all age autism strategy. Before that, it was only for certain groups of people. So we've come a long way, I think, as a society. Talked back to the awareness raising, actually, and you can go into most supermarkets or different places now, and there's a greater understanding of need that there are quieter areas. Absolutely. So I think that helps, doesn't it, in terms of what you say? So I think there's a definite opportunity, regardless of diagnosis, and that need is really
question. Yes, it is a quick question. I think it's talking about the COVID syndrome, actually, because parents then realise, I think there's something wrong with my child because they were at home more with them. It wasn't that. They just wanted more attention sometimes. My question is, I had a gentleman turned up on my doorstep in the summer. Why are you sending children to Wye Forest at 6 with autism? And what they were concerned about was that they were sending them in the taxi, a child of 6, on their own, with nobody supervising them. And I rang up about it, and nothing was done about it. But I thought that was dreadful, actually. That is people not talking to the parents. And the lady that was here last time, she talked to them about it. I talked to the parents, and they sorted it out. But that's all it needed, Then you've got to send a child of 6 with somebody to the child could have got out the taxi. So, and why Forest? We have an autism school. I know it's private, but there's just one on Overton Road, just up the road from where we are.
Viv, I'd suggest that's one that you take outside this meeting and talk to people about, but it's a person there, isn't there?
Yeah,
right. Wow. I wasn't expecting that this morning, but great questions. I think all of us have got food for thought there, haven't we? Definitely. But thank all of you. We can tell you're passionate about it, that's for sure, because we've got the answers. But I think we're over to Natalie now for the performance. Thanks, you two. Very
No, that's okay. I'm going to stay for the next bit, so thank you.
Yeah, I think Sonia's on. Sorry.
Okay, well, I know we've got a lot to get through on the performance report across people, so I'm going to go through some of the salient points in the report on the adults' performance. I've got Amanda Alcock here, service manager in my area, that covers some of the specialist areas, and we'll just touch upon those in the reports, and then I'll open it up for questions. So if I look at the demand in adult social care at the moment, we've been doing a lot of work at the council really to look at our demographic data and to really think about future demand and how we're prepared for that, and what kind of service delivery that we think we'll need. So within that demographic data, we know that between now and 2030, think you can even look at the data till 2040. We're expecting to see an increase in the over 85s demographics. If I think about people that are presenting for adult social care at the moment, a huge cohort are 75 plus. So that's very much, we're starting to see those trends coming through to the service at the moment. So it's not just about planning for the future, it's actually thinking about what that type of demand looks like now. Reasons that people tend to present to us are around their physical and personal care needs, learning disability. So we've talked through that this morning, but also we're starting to see increases in memory and cognition needs. Some of the areas of pressure that we're experiencing in adults at the moment are people requiring residential dementia care and nursing care. So that just gives you an indication of the age cohorts and some of the needs that are presenting to adult social care at the moment. Apologies, my throat is very wobbly. I've got a sore throat, so if I sound a little bit painful at times, I will bring Mandy in. So in terms of waiting lists, so I've updated you in previous sessions. There's some good news around waiting lists. So we've continued to reduce waiting lists. We've got a number of areas that don't have a waiting list. So the targeted action that we've taken has been positive. So for example, in community mental health teams, our Redwood Hospital team, preparing for safeguarding, our carers and financial assessment teams, we have no waiting list. So that's really good and that's really positive. But I think it's important for the committee to be aware that we are still seeing demand quite high in adults. So we do have areas of waiting times where you can see I've evidenced some of those areas within the report. So if I take, for example, our community social work teams, they're still averaging on about 140 referrals a week. They're not all new people, but a lot of them are. And how we respond to that at the earliest point is really important. We are trying to look at our performance around assessing people within 28 days. That's improved at 72%. But obviously, there's a pressure between how we manage that through. If we see periods of peak at people presenting to adult social care and how soon that we can get to them and intervene with them. So where we have waits, we put in place what we call a RAG rating system, where we're continually reviewing risk. We know that urgency can change. And that we're remaining in contact with people and their families to make sure that we're appraised of the situation. That's what services in social care tend to do where there are pressured areas within that. If I go on to our reviews, we've set a target of 75%. We reached 69%. We were just in touching distance of the 70% target that we set last year. This quarter compared to the last quarter, we've seen an improvement in the throughput of reviews. But again, I think it's important for the committee to be aware that when we see those peaks at the front door and there are people that are not known to us, we really have to pool our resource in that area because risk could be higher. That does then have an impact on our review performance. So during the summer going into autumn, we started seeing an increase in people coming to the front door. We had to do just that. We had to pool our resource at the front door. So we saw a dip in our review performance. So we're having to put some targeted action in place now around dedicated resource to look at that over the next 2 months. We are still on target to meet our 75%, but I just think it's important to reflect how that can be pressured. It's not a straight line of just we set a target. We have to think about the resource and the capacity that we've got and where best placed to pull that resource. So we are on target, but we've noticed a little bit of a dip just around the summer when we started to see those peaks presenting to the front door. Hospital discharge. So we often come with an update on hospital discharge. Our complex discharges, our performance has gone from strength to strength. That's been recognised by the Department of Health and Social Care. We've talked in the past about programmes of work, so we really invested heavily in our reablement offer, and that's really supported the hospitals. The hospitals can now see their own performance in terms of people being discharged on pathway 1, so that means that they return home. that's actually increased. So we've seen a decrease in people going into beds, which is what we wanted to see. We're seeing more people go home. And our metrics are above the national average in terms of 88% of people still being supported 91 days after discharge at home. So we're continuing to do really well in that area. We're very much in busy season at the moment in the hospitals, which will not surprise you. Winter is very much here for us. So we do see those increases in demand. But because we're supporting more people to go home, we're actually able to reduce the length of stay of somebody being in hospital. So we are seeing the fruits of our labour in that area, but we're never complacent with it because we know what winter pressures can bring in terms of that hospital discharge support. But our length of stay has reduced. So from a point of referral, on average, it's about 1.65 days to discharge somebody. And again, I think the system have really recognised the performance in Shropshire and how we've really helped with that flow in the complex discharge arena. So I think there's some really good partnership working and relationships there at the moment, because I think there's been that recognition. We've invested in transformation, that's supporting more people to go home, it's reducing length of stay in hospital. So overall, there are system impacts to that performance. I'm going to hand over to Amanda Alcock now that will just give some headlines in terms of these specialist areas, and then we'll open up for questions.
Thank you. So yeah, I'll just pick out some headlines from the specialist social work teams. The first one we have there is preparation for adulthood. Leslie's already spoken about preparation for adulthood and learning disability, but we support people younger. We have a commitment to work with people from a younger age who are transitioning into adulthood, and that early involvement allows us to identify adult needs at an earlier stage. We have a Rising 16 meeting that puts across all of the people directorate, so all the teams involved, and the priorities there are complex health needs, health intervention, early help, commissioning and accommodation. And with a real focus on early help, we're developing early help hubs and PFA hubs as well. For learning disability, I'll just add in a few highlights from the presentation earlier. We are developing and implementing a learning disability team and learning disability and autism team that will work in a relationship-based way with parent carers and individuals. And again, looking at local priorities that link to national strategies around good health, employment, things to do in the day, leisure, housing, relationships and friendship and community, with the aspiration to do things closer to home in people's own communities. Some of the outcomes that we've got there, we're high performing, as we talked about earlier, in supporting people to live at home in their own homes. And also we've done a programme of reviews for supported living, and we are improving outcomes there, things like high use of tech and maximising independence. For mental health, so mental health teams based in the communities, we've done a focused piece of work over the past 12 months on the most complex individuals who, it says in the paper there, Section 117 aftercare. So these are our most complex individuals with mental health need, and we will work in a multidisciplinary way with the individual and have good partnership working, looking at those outcomes for the most complex individuals. That chart shows there that we have identified increasingly over the last 12 months the complex health needs. For the approved mental health professionals, they're the AMPs that work from Redwoods Hospital. And an important piece of work there that we've worked on over the last 12 months is around Section 13 of the Mental Health Act. This looks at prevention, so preventing the use of the Mental Health Act to detain people and reducing hospital admissions. That is working in a preventative way on least restricted options, that also is very personalised, but of course looks at risk and the team and the individuals and the professionals around the individual. That's it for the specialist teams.
Sorry, can you just explain a bit more about that? Because I know that sometimes it's difficult when people go to the hospital with severe mental health issues and they should be in a mental health environment. They're not. And so just explain about that 13 thing again.
So in the Mental Health Act, the mental health professional has a duty to consider the use of the Mental Health Act. And in that duty to consider, they have to liaise with all the professionals around the individual, their nearest relative and the person themselves, and put a support plan in place around the person.
Anybody got any questions on the adult part while we're in this bit?
That's quite a few people, isn't it? My mother had Alzheimer's and there was about 17 people altogether, I'm sure.
It can be a lot of people.
Yeah, and they were very helpful, actually.
Excellent. Carry on.
We'll just take questions now on the adults.
Yeah, I'm sorry, Ruth, I didn't see you.
It's a very quick question on the sensory impairment section, because we had answered that specifically last time. Is that the data there? Is that just people with sight loss, or does it include hearing loss as well?
Both.
Okay, lovely, thank you.
Okay, carry on.
We'll move on to David.
Yeah, move on to David.
Over to you, David.
Okay, so I'll with a very brief overview. I'll take the paper as read, just pulling out a few key strengths for the committee. You're seeing the really positive early years education take-up across all the different age ranges. And I think aligned to that, we're confident that we will meet our sufficiency duty from September 25, despite the increasing requirements to accommodate 9-month plus year-olds from that point in time, which is really encouraging. To do. You'll see some strong performance from our admissions team in terms of parental preferences, both first and all and any choices. And that has improved from last year, both against national and statistical neighbours, which is really encouraging. We're really pleased with the improving attendance picture and the reduced number of parent exclusions that we're starting to see. I think I reported to this committee in July. We were just starting to see a kind of holding position where we were just, remaining pretty static, and just the first sign of it starting to reduce. That's continued into the first part of the term, and up to Friday last week, if we do a year-on-year comparison, we had 33 parent exclusions this time last year. We have 16 this time this year, so that's quite a significant change. So we're really encouraged by that, particularly in our secondary schools as well. You'll note that the virtual school continues to perform really strongly, and as always, have developed many different innovative solutions to different challenges that they are experiencing to work with some of our most vulnerable and training people that face most challenging situations, and we're using that innovation to steer and develop further wider work that I'll come on to in our actions in a moment. We've used that as a bit of a model really in terms of how we deploy some of our wider aspects really. In terms of SEND, again, you'll see a range of information, and I hope what you also see in relation to SEND is a greater level of transparency. I think it's the first time that we've shared with committee members information around annual reviews and the detail in there. So we've had a lot of work this year around our data accuracy and information, and we're starting to see the benefits of that and being able to share and provide that information. So you'll notice first of all, obviously the significant work around improving mainstream provision and enabling most young people's needs to be met in mainstream through the ordinary available provision framework and support of the education quality advisors, which is encouraging. A lot still to do, don't get me wrong, but it's moving in the right direction. We've expanded specialist provision, both in the special school and in the SEND hub arena. You'll see the numbers in there, which is again encouraging. We've got a programme of work continuing this academic year, particularly around secondary, into the SEND hubs as well. So further work in that space. Education, health and care plan timeliness is improving. The numbers are in there. I won't cover those, but you'll see essentially on average, if you wind back to February 24, we were taking around 33.1 weeks to complete a new plan. We are down to 21.9 weeks in October 24, which is really encouraging. Statutory requirement is 20 weeks, so we're nearly there with that one. So we're confident in the new year we'll be well and truly on top of that, which is a massive achievement given the range of increasing demand that is set out in the plan. Most of it we talked to today. Annual review recovery programme is underway. Noting there 1,300 educational and care plans. It's a huge number. It's heading towards half of our educational and care plans. That talks to two things. One, the significant increase in new plans that we've had that then just need to be reviewed every single year, but also the work that the team are doing around quality and also improving their efficiency as well. So that is a huge programme of work that's starting, in fact started middle of November. You'll see a continuation of the work around quality, and the quality framework is still in place. We've shifted that slightly to focus on different phases of educational and care plans. So do some early years work, PFA, post-16 work, and again, we'll keep that working through so we get an overview of that programme. But what we're encouraged by is that we're starting to see not just the feedback from our own internal QA, that is multi-agency with partners, but we're hearing that directly from schools and Ofsted inspections as well. So we're starting to be able to triangulate some of that improvement, which is encouraging. So actions and challenges, like the committee, demand, we've talked about that today, it remains really high across all different areas, which is really significant. To put it in context, as you will see in the reports, the assessment of education, health and care plans were around 271 in 2021. That rose to 902 in 2023, and we're seeing that remain high. So it's really significant demand. We've issued 705 new education, health and care plans so far this year, compares to just over 570 last year. So it's not slowing down yet, hence the work we're doing. We need to be doing that. Annual review recovery team, we've mentioned it in a number of plans. That is going for a 12 to 18 month programme. Just the simple numbers around that. If you take 52 weeks, that's the requirement to update 25 plans per week. That's going some. That's 5 plans a day. We're not going to compromise on quality, so I'd rather take a little bit longer and do it properly and be transparent and share that with families, which is what we're doing in this way. So some of this information has been shared with the public in the Sender newsletter that goes out monthly anyway. So we're trying to increase our transparency around this. So there's plenty to do in that space. Demand for places remains strong because of that increase in demand around educational and care plans and increasing complexity that we've talked about today, actually. And you will have heard, as we've said today, that's putting pressure on various different services, social care, child early help, transport, schools, as well as the SEND team. So there's lots to do around that area. It's also bringing financial pressures, as I've articulated in the report as well. Plenty still to do around early years provision. We're working through the data analysis with the Department of Education and the benchmarking. It's slightly more complex with the early years space because rather than schools, which generally families tend to go for their nearest or their, within a proximity of their schools. Early years, it's a bit different. It can often be where you're working and you can drop off and pick up and different things. So when we've done some active monitoring around this, around any waiting lists that may be available, we've spotted young people that are on multiple different waiting lists for the same child. So they're not going to go to all those different places. So we're just unpicking some of that, hence why we're confident that we're going to meet the duty, but it's taking quite a bit of work from the team actually. But again, the response from early years settings and PBI providers has been phenomenal in terms of that. It's a real challenge for them to meet that level of increase, but also to meet the financial challenges that are coming to as well. Similarly around schools and education placements more generally, we're linking that to new housing development and keeping a very close eye on all of that. Linking in with the national yields, as they're called, that come out of from the DfE as to how many young people of all different ages and types of need that we should be expecting to come through from a housing development of and we're using that to update our forecasting. And as I mentioned, lots of work around inclusion and attendance. both from the perspective of the Send an AP strategy and outcomes framework that's in draft, and it's open as a live consultation. So I would encourage all committee members to respond to that if you haven't already done so, and share with your areas. We will be moving into developing a belonging strategy in early 2025, and that really links with the work that the virtual school have done in a phenomenal way, actually. And I think that would really take us into the next level of development, which fits with the wider national direction as well. We're keeping a close eye on the national direction and various different movements and things that are going on. So we'll just keep a close eye on that one. But we're encouraged, but there's plenty to do. So the green shoots are growing, but we can't stop watering the plant.
Yes, so what I wanted to know really was how much contact you have with preschool and nurseries, and how much input you have into what they do, for 3 reasons. Okay, so generally, I think there are a lot more children now who go to school still in nappies. There's a lot more children now who go to school and cannot use a knife and fork. And there's a lot of more children now that can't actually talk. And, you know, I don't pretend to be any sort of expert, but I do think that if you have, you know, a cohort of children that are still in nappies, can't speak, can't feed themselves, then obviously there's a limit to what schools can do. And to try and catch up, because it's not just learning to speak, it's the whole interaction thing, you know. So to me, I understand all about lockdown and everything like that. But to me, I think, I don't know. I think that perhaps there ought to be a campaign to encourage parents so that when their kids go to preschool or, you know, nursery, that they're actively trying to, you know, they actually do know how to use cutlery. They can actually interact, and, you know, that they encourage them to potty train. And, you know, I just think they're basic things. But if you haven't got those things when you go to school, then perhaps you're going to be, you know, perhaps it will affect your development. You know, maybe, you know, you'll sort of, I don't know. But anyway, it's just, I just think that we have to pick up all these things. But I certainly think there's some parental education that should be going on there, and how you do that through what means is, you know, another thing. But so that's my bit.
So if I respond to some of that, Councillor Weil, I think it absolutely is a real challenge around parental expectation, perception, and that's certainly being shared by our early years colleagues as well. They are concerned by some of the level of expectation of some family members, and we've heard that directly from them. We've got several aspects at work to address that, both through our work directly with education providers, earlier settings, etc., within our teams, but also within the early help space. There's a parenting team that do lots of really good work, direct support families. That they are there as almost like a helpline, just to call, just to offload. I think what we're certainly seeing is it is really quite difficult for families, and some of what you describe, whilst it's not right, I think it describes some of the pressures that some families are under, and are not coping and finding it really difficult, but then does have a knock on in terms of the young person arriving when they should be potty trained. They should be able to arrive and do some of these things that they're not able to, and early years providers, early years settings, nurseries are working phenomenally hard to catch them up. And I think what we're seeing is quite a bit of that catch up succeeding. So when they get into primary, it's not perfect, but they're a lot better than had they not gone. And I think one of the things we're encouraged by is as the programme rolls back to 9-month-olds, the more young people have got access to that early years provision, I think the better. So it will help address some of those issues you've rightly described.
So let me just come back to you on the one thing you said. So I get that if a child arrives at school, can't do any of those things, that's a flag. But when you say, you know, that that the family is under pressure, I kind of take issue with you a bit, because you should feed your children. I mean, that's a basic, you should absolutely feed your children, and so I don't think it should be described actually as a pressure. I think it's almost, it's the children's human rights to be fed.
And I don't disagree. We're certainly not making excuses for families where that might be the case. I think what we're saying is there are some wider challenges that families are facing that impact them in a different way. What we're trying to do is provide different solutions so that we don't end up in a situation where colleagues in Sonia's world are picking them up from a safeguarding perspective. We're trying to get that early intervention, so our health visitors and the prevention teams are working into that space. We've got some really interesting pilot work going on where we've had the integrated 2.5-year-old checks. We haven't been successful where that's been happening in the family home for a variety of reasons, but it's far more successful when it happens in the setting, because the child's definitely awake. We're challenging them more, finding out what's going on. There's an opportunity with the family, with the mum, dad, etc., with the nursery, to unpick and unpack some of those things. So certainly not an excuse, but actually we're trying to respond proactively to avoid those escalations occurring.
Chair?
With I'm just touching on something you said in your little presentation, is you referred to the number of houses being built in Shrewsbury, and to me it seems vast that everywhere I look there's new houses being built. But at the same time, we've seen closures of schools such as the Wakeman, and I'm not sure how you're going to cope, because there seems to be hundreds and hundreds of new houses being built. What is the future provision for schools? Is there more planned schools to be built or schools to be enlarged? But if there isn't, I think we're heading for a problem.
So in terms of responding to that, we're keeping a very close eye on the not just the builds, but actually the families that arrive there, and actually the numbers of people that are arriving. And what we're seeing is it's not quite as large as we would expect in some parts. Some parts it absolutely is, don't get me wrong, but it's not consistent. And there was some work done by our place directorate actually in terms of what 2050 might look like in Shropshire. And it was interesting that they described a situation where rather than lots of family homes, far more individual 1 and 2 type of premises would be required in terms of that. And I think that talks to the different type of groups of people that are moving into Shropshire. So we're keeping a really close eye on that one. We are absolutely expanding schools where we need to, and those conversations are going on. We have work with schools around growth funding. So where there are individual cohorts, we had that certainly 2 years ago, where there was a particularly large cohort nationally, and we worked with schools to accommodate those young people, because the challenge we face is, whilst we could build lots of different things, and in 10 years time we could have too much provision, and that might think, well, why would that be a challenge? Well, whenever you build something, the funding for schools is always based on pupil numbers, and where schools have not got sufficient pupil numbers, that really puts pressure on their staffing, their curriculum, and the offer that they can provide generally. And that's a real challenge. So we have to manage this really carefully. So we are working, and Andy Nichols, who's our childcare and education sufficiency manager, works really closely with plan colleagues, with schools themselves, with our admissions team, just to understand the plan around this. And we put something called our SCAP. It's a technical term, it's a sufficiency forecasting tool. We report that to the education annually, and that includes what our forecasts are, what sufficient capacity we've got, and how we're managing that. So we're keeping a really close eye on all these things. We don't want too much, we want enough in the right places, which is often the challenge.
One thing I've observed, and I've not seen anything like it in the last 2 or 3 years, the extent to building. I've lived in Shropshire for maybe 35 years. I've not seen anything like this. There's houses being built at every fringe of Shrewsbury. And, I was discussing with my own friends and colleagues, saying, how on earth are we going to be able to have enough schools, enough doctors, surgeries, etc., to cope with a huge expansion? And if you're not aware of it, I mean, just drive around the outskirts of Shrewsbury and there's houses being built everywhere. And unless we get to grips with it now and start building these schools, in 5 years' time, we're not going to be able to cope with the population explosion.
We experienced this some years ago when I was on planning, and I was amazed how few children actually come out of new builds, because families can't afford the houses with children.
Too big.
It was
Too big.
really,
houses that
yeah.
are in there.
Can I just say as well, I think it probably sits outside this meeting, but if you look at the data for Shropshire, actually a lot of people who move here are actually retired. They're the ones who can afford the expensive housing. So you go onto Otley Road, a lot of the 4-bed homes are actually owned by retired people.
Yes.
So you can't really compare apples with pears, because the amount of kids you're getting off the estate at Otley Road is about half what you get from the similar amount of houses in Telford. So I think it's probably a question for outside this meeting, because it's very involved, and Eddie West might fill you in on that when he's not busy with the local plan.
Ruth.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you. The education, health and care plan, a significant increase, and we're exposed to being double the national rate. Have you done any work around why Shropshire numbers are increasing so much compared to other local authorities?
So we have, when we look back before 2022, there was almost a much lower level in Shropshire, and I think some of us talked to almost a kind of catch up and identification of need, and following that and some wider work that's been done around thresholds, and I think we talked about previously. What we're looking to ensure now is, and this is consistent with a similar question that Councillor Wild asked before around ADHD and autism assessments, we check every month the number of yeses to assess for an education health and care plan, and where we said no. And that's moved from broadly in line with national, where we're saying yes, we think we should assess, to actually lower, where we're saying more no's, actually where the requests for assessment are less appropriate. So we're having those challenges, Councillor Hamilton, absolutely. And that's part of the work that the Education Quality Advisory team need to do with schools to ensure that that standard of expectation is more consistent across the county. And at the minute, it isn't quite as consistent as we want it to be, hence the work to do that.
Thank you very much. Kevin?
Well, thank you. I just want to mention what Claire was talking about, and children going to preschool or whatever, not ready, basically. But there has to be an understanding that it's in my, I don't like talking about personal stuff, but in my family, wider family, there's been 4 children that have great difficulties with speech. Of them 4, 3, one of them went to Sevendale, and she's back to normal, ordinary school, mainstream school now, and she's fantastic. Well, couldn't shut her up at the last wedding. But and then there's another young boy, my nephew, who didn't really speak properly until he was about 5, and now he's fine. He's okay. He's doing well at school. And I've got a granddaughter and a grandson that are 3 weeks apart in age, and the granddaughter's absolutely flying, but the grandson is having difficulties with talk, speech. And the reason for that, we've been told, is because he was premature. So it's not always sort of not being taught, but it is, there are other reasons. And I don't want every family to be sort of that they're not helping their children and that sort of thing. But in this case, he's having difficulty talking, but he went away for a month with his father and his mother, or in France. He's come back a bit different boy, and he's speaking and that sort of thing. So it's not always the parents' fault. Thank you.
Duncan?
Slightly following on from that, really, I think this is all very sad, but if we look at, we know what works in terms of helping families. It's family centres and Sure Start, and all the research demonstrated that. But in the West Midlands since 2010, we've lost half the family centres, in spite of COVID and everything else. So we're getting to make the problem is significantly worse because we've taken the provision away. And always what happens when you do that is it ends up costing you more, because those children then arrive at school and all the implications of managing those children at school, which could have been dealt with at an earlier stage, hit the council and hit the life chances of those children as well. So it is very sad, and I'm not sort of blaming councils because I know they had huge financial problems in that decade, but we haven't had a national replacement of what was a very effective programme of family centres and Short Start that was there in 2010 and is not there now. And until it's put back on that sort of level, because I've been there, I've been a children's social worker, so you can say these families, parents should be stepping up to the plate. Well, they're not capable of doing that. There's not much. So, I mean, your options are either you bring those children into care, more and more children come into care, or else you find a way of actually trying to help them. It doesn't help to say you're not up to the job. Not a very good starting point for our conversation. But if there's a vision there for them, we know from the evidence that we can impact upon this problem. We won't solve everybody's problem, but we can make a positive difference. But we've taken that safety net away.
Hello to you too, anyway.
Thanks. So, Sonia Miller, Assistant Director of Children's Social Care, and
hello everyone, Dennis Gray, Assistant Director, Services to Children and Families.
we're going to work through the performance report, but the first two paragraphs focus on early help and intervention, particularly in relation to 0 to 5, so it might be pertinent to kind of pick that up. So I think People's Overview Committee, last year we presented a paper where we talked about the early help transformation, because we were very clear that we needed to address the demand into children's social care, and that transformation has happened over the last 18 months, and the whole final programme went live in May of this year. There's a real focus in that early help offer on the offers 0 to 5s. You'll see from the performance paper that the referrals into early help and the contacts to early help have increased by 297% on last year since the transformation. So we know that we're reaching significantly more families than we had been previously. We've also seen an 83% increase in families worked with in a targeted way. So the targeted early help, so rather than just the universal early help offer, the targeted offer has seen an 83% increase. There is a 0 to 5 focus within that transformation programme. That includes a parenting hub, as David referred to, where we work in a targeted way with parents, offering personal programmes, one-to-one programmes, group work programmes, education support, etc. We do have 5 family hubs, previously were referred to as Short Start centres, but they're not called that anymore, across the county, and they are very popular in terms of their drop-ins, particularly the baby drop-ins each week. So we see between 30 and 40 babies each session, and there are several sessions a week in each of the family hubs. So there is an offer, it is a growing offer, and it's a developing offer, and it is delivered in partnership with public health and the health visiting nurses. So they also have their open access clinics, they also have their one-to-one sort of sessions with parents, etc., within those hubs. So the purpose of that is if an issue was picked up at the earliest opportunity, then that support could be put in at that earliest opportunity. What we do need to do is spread the word and for that to continue to grow, because it has got capacity to see more families. But I think that hub was designed in response to looking at the data that education had, that schools had, that early years settings were sharing around speech and language, etc. There is a speech and language programme that all early years settings have been trained in around, it's called Talk Boost, thank you. And most of our practitioners, early help practitioners, have also been trained in that so that they are able to offer that direct support. So the offer is there, we do need to grow it. So please do talk to your communities about it. And each of those hubs run outreach provision as well out into the rural communities. So the Ludlow one, for example, has got an outreach provision that goes out to Clun, goes out to various other, the smaller towns, and that happens from each of the hubs. So I would like to reassure you that that issue is well understood and is being responded to across the partnership. And I think it's really important that it's a partnership issue. So speech and language, child development sits very much with health visiting and sort of health provision, but it is about using all of the opportunities that we've got, i.e. the early help hubs and those early help practitioners, to have that knowledge and skills to help support and identify that need at the earliest opportunities. We need to get more families in through the door. But that's just the start of the report, but I don't know if you want to carry on or okay. So the focus of this report is very much on demand into children's social care, on the back of the significant transformation that's happened around early help, but also the work that's happening at the other end in terms of stepping stones and exiting children from social care. So hopefully you've had the opportunity to read the report. The data is quite clear that we are seeing a significant shift in contacts and referrals in through the front door. So our front door, known as Compass, deals with safeguarding referrals, but also early help referrals, general information sharing, which is contacts, etc. as well. So it's a huge volume of work that kind of goes through that in a month, well over 1,000 contacts at any one time. So you'll see that the contacts and referrals since the early help transformation has really started to track its shift from being above last year's line and is tracking consistently below this year's line. And that obviously shows with the re-referrals as well. We'll turn that curve with re-referrals. The important aspect about re-referrals is, do we do the right thing the first time? And if you can get that intervention right the first time, then it stops that kind of, sort of circular sort of demand. So there's been real positives since early help went live. The whole transformation went live in its entirety in May. Aspects had gone live earlier than that, but we've seen that real dip in re-referral rates coming in as well. When we talk about referrals, which we talk about into children's social care, which is where a referral comes in with a threshold element to it, and therefore it's being referred in for some form of social work assessment. We've again seen that tipping point in June where the early help's gone up and the referrals into children's social care have started to come down. So we've got green shoots in terms of that front door, and the purpose and the outcome of the early help transformation was very much to reach more families faster at the earliest opportunity to stop that escalating in. And I would say that the data is starting to show green shoots. I can't say we've turned a corner. 3 quarters, 2 quarters, 3 quarters isn't a turn of the curve, but it is a shift, which is really positive. The graph on the top of page 54 shows the early help episode starting and the really significant shift in that curve in terms of the totals. But you'll also see that shift in under fives kind of coming in as well, and that targeting of that work. I think if many of you were in committee about this time last year, we talked very much around the 0 to 4s and the really significant increase we'd seen in harm to 0 to 4s. We talked about quite a bit last year. So that targeting of that 0 to 4 work is really important in that shift, and we're starting to see the 0 to 4s coming down into children's social care. The rate of referrals, again, you will see that this is measured and is a comparable and benchmarkable data. So the rate of referrals into children's social care is measured per 10,000 of the child population. And you'll see that we are seeing that we've always tracked lower than that in comparison to our SAT neighbours and our England neighbours. And again, we're starting to see a turn in the curve of that in terms of work coming into children's social care. And the referrals with no further action, we've always tracked lower, but again, we're really quite low on any referral coming in where we do nothing with it. We proactively respond to that referral. So that can be support and advice and guidance, that can be a step down to early help, or it can be a social work assessment or an escalation because we've hit threshold. If I pause there before I go on to the section 47, is probably the easiest way of taking any questions.
Oh, thank you. It's not a question, it's just a statement, really. I was on the regional task and finish for the hubs all those years ago, and I was never that confident in it because of outreach and that sort of thing. But it's had a refurb, and what I see is that it's doing much, much better. So I thank you very much for that. Thank you.
Thank you.
I think this all happened before, actually. I think it's happened when I was a little girl. People just had to work. People didn't were working all the time, more women than men sometimes because they were going back from the war. But I honestly think that if we'd have kept how we taught young people how to cook in schools, we might have had the possibility that our children would be fed properly. Unfortunately, we've gone through a time where young people, young women, don't know how to cook. I was talking about this to my friends yesterday, and they all said the same thing. They don't know how to cook. They get takeaways and they get the children chips and mushy peas and different things. But they don't know how to cook a proper meal. That's what I'm talking about. And it's a shame because it's so easy to cook a proper meal. Your children would be better for it. They'd look better. The schools are doing a damn good job because they're giving them one meal a day. I personally think that my school, that's Bishop Hooper School, they suffered quite badly because they feel that they're thinking of going into an academy. They feel that Shropshire Council is not taking enough notice of what they have to say. And that is what I'm picking up, actually, at Bishop Hooper School. They're thinking of moving into an academy. Thank you.
Duncan?
Yeah, just to say I'm incredibly impressed by the results you've achieved in terms of turning the tide around. And it wasn't a given. I mean, there's lots of councils who have come into some concern from Ofsted, and it always results in the improvements that we've seen here. So I realise that's an awful lot of work and a lot of honesty and a lot of reflection has been gone on from both you as managers, but also from the frontline social workers. So from the committee's point of view, I'll put that on record that we're very appreciative of all the commitment and dedication of all the staff that's achieving this. I think we need to be careful going forward because equally, I don't want to say it was complacency, but I think we didn't quite realise where things had got to before we were told where things had got to, and we must make sure that we don't drift back there again. But that's an issue before. I don't want that to take away from saying I'm going to be invested by the work.
This isn't social work, this is early help.
Yes, well, I mean, it's the early help team that we've invested in, which is causing the reductions in
Credit needs to go to the early workers.
Misspoke.
Most of which aren't qualified workers, you know, they're highly skilled. It's just that sort of finesse. No,
it's absolutely fine.
I didn't mean to minimise your thanks. Apologies if it came from that. I just wanted it directed in the right way, to the right place.
I mean, I'd like to move this motion to do that because I do think there's been incredible investment and there's been, and I apologise I got the wrong people, but I think the committee need to make that clear that they are very appreciative of what's been achieved.
Yes.
Is that a motion?
Well, I don't know. I think so. We don't really have to do it.
I think it can be a recommendation at the end.
But I do think it's useful. The committee is good, in my view, but I know there's lots of people on the committee that may not be everybody's view. So I think it is useful if it is clear. Yes.
Well, I'm supporting Duncan's comment too on the early help. I think it's really positive. I'd like to know where the open access clinics are and how are they shared with families? Is it through the health visitor?
Quite often through the health visitor, but also through the information sharing, the early help newsletter.
Right.
There's a whole range of the Facebook page that the centres have. So the open access clinics are in our hubs. So Sunflower House in Shrewsbury, Helena Lane in Ludlow, Oswestry, Raven House in Market Drayton. The second one is Shrewsbury.
So you share those Facebook links? I think we could help with that as well. I think it's something really proactive for us to do in our local.
I thought Helena Lane was only adults.
No, it's got very active.
I'm surprised because I go in there an awful lot.
So I think the early health work's really positive, and seeing that come through for 0 to 4-year-olds and reducing those numbers is a big achievement and something to be celebrated, really. But we shouldn't have been in a position anyway, but it's great to see it improving.
Thank you. Yeah, okay. So if I carry on then, obviously when you're telling the story of demand, you have to look at what's coming in through the front door, but you then also have to look at what the type of work that's coming through. And I think at the couple of past committees, I referred to the complexity of work. And the first point where we see that option around complexity of work is the Section 47 inquiry. So just so that you're aware, that's the point whereby a strategy discussion has been held with all of our partner agencies and where it's been determined that the threshold for significant harm has been met. So that is that child has already been harmed at that point or is highly likely to suffer significant harm in the immediate future. So you can see there from April through to September this year, we've had a real spike in that work coming in through the front door. So whilst we've seen less coming in, what we've seen coming in has been of more concern in terms of the threshold for significant harm. And that obviously impacts on the social work assessments, because what you're then doing is not necessarily a social work assessment that's just looking at the family and how we can help and support. You're trying to understand risk and harm within that family at that threshold stage. So that investigative social work assessment is quite often done in partnership with the police because an injury has happened or there's a level of neglect that needs an investigation, etc. It's not always just done as a social work assessment. It's very much an assessment that's done in partnership. And that was a very significant spike over the summer. We've seen that doing that consistently over the last few years, which is why we talk about the increased complexity in the system. When we see a spike like that, we then also performance struggles quite often with the assessment timeliness. So to have a spike as significant as that graph shows in the report over the summer period, when you've got quite often almost 50% of your workforce on leave at any one point in time, we really see the impact on that because our caseloads remain high in Shropshire. It's a continual sort of like challenge for us to kind of manage those caseloads. Particularly in the case management teams, we have still got those vacancies that we've not been able to fulfil, but the direct impact is on then the timeliness of assessments and then being completed. We have 9 weeks to complete a social work assessment. We have 3 weeks to complete a Section 47 assessment. So you can see that shift in timeliness gets really directly impacted, particularly over like a school holiday period. That then has a knock-on effect in managing your demand and your progress and your planning and your output, etc. I then do move on directly to the looked after children numbers because I know that's an area of committee is always interested in understanding. And over the past 4 years, we have explained that we do understand what the increase in children looked after has been about. And again, I've summarised that here in the report as the rise in 0 to 5-year-olds being harmed and becoming looked after, the rise in unaccompanied asylum-seeking children being cared for by Shropshire, an increase in families with 3 or more children becoming looked after. And we had then the exit issues with the courts and the progress of the court work being very slow during COVID and out of COVID. We've seen significant progress in relation to that. What we're seeing is that we're starting to see the rate of children starting to become looked after to slow and stabilise. I wouldn't go any further than that at the moment. I'm hopeful that we are going to see the curve starting to turn. But if we look at the data to date, we've seen that it's dropped from 41 per 10,000 of the child population in March 22, followed to sort of 35 per 10,000 in 23, and we're currently at 36 per 10,000. So we're seeing it slow and stabilise at this point in time. I understand that the numbers worry councillors, but if you compare that to the harm that's coming through, we are assured, we audit every child that comes into care, we report that to the Children's Improvement Board. We've had a focus visit again in July with Ofsted looking at those kind of things. We've never been told that we've got a child looked after that shouldn't be looked after. The quarters have never told us that, Ofsted have never told us that, and our own auditing has never told us that. So whilst I understand that the numbers are a worry, I think it is also about we have that duty, particularly where there is significant harm. The different comparators then is that we look at the children looked after as at a date in any one date, and those rates are the ones that sort of fluctuate more considerably, fluctuate much more easily, because you could have 8 children come in and out in a week, or you could have 8 children go out and none go in. You could have 12 come in and none go out. So your as at a date rate is much more sort of fluctuating, and we've seen a shift from 127 at a date of children becoming looked after down to 125 of that per 10,000. At the time of writing this report, we had 746 children at the start of the period
and went down to 735. As of last Friday, we were at 725. But again, we could take in 8 unaccompanied asylum seekers and we'd go back up to 730 something very, very quickly. So it's about that kind of steadying of that flow. At the bottom of page 57, I talked to you through the type of placements that these children are in, the type of homes that they're living in. And this is also really important when you're understanding the context of your children looked after population. And if you add together the types of placement that are in families, it's around 80% of our children are placed in family settings. So that's either with their connected carers and their families, with foster families, or that they're placed for adoption. So we've got less than 20% of our children looked after that are either in residential or what we would call supported accommodation for your sort of 17-year-olds, which is a real positive because it means that the vast majority of our children are looked after in family settings. If I go on to page 58, I've given you a summary of the type of activity that's been happening in the court proceedings arena, because obviously I talked to you about the volume of complexity, and that gives you a real sense of the complexity that we've been dealing with within the court arena. So going back to those children that are looked after, over 80% of those are subject to a court order. So the court has intervened and said that the local authority needs to look after these children, that it's not safe for them to be returned to their birth families. And again, that refers back to the shift for us here in Shropshire around complexity. That complexity changed at the start of COVID and it's not gone back down. So we are seeing a level of harm to children that is not what Shropshire would be used to seeing historically, both in terms of injuries, drug use, mental health, domestic abuse, violence, and the combination of all of those as well. So at the moment, the care proceedings work is progressing at pace. At the time of writing this report, 150 children in 86 families, with 22 children in 11 families were waiting to be issued. So we had 86 families in court and 11 families waiting to be issued on. Those issues are done in a planned way. That doesn't necessarily mean to say they're waiting. It's because we're issuing those in a very planned way. Out of the 150 children in live care proceedings, 110 children in 61 families commenced those proceedings since the 1st of April, and 159 children in 95 families have concluded since the 1st of January. So you can see that the rate of movement within those care proceedings has significantly increased from that huge bottleneck that I think I reported around a year, 18 months ago. There's a lot of work happening on the 26 weeks. So the requirement nationally is that we conclude proceedings within 26 weeks. And that's very challenging when it's complicated, particularly if you're looking for a number of experts. But we have moved to 35 children within this period, concluding within the 26 weeks, which was significantly higher than last year. And 77 children concluded within the 27 to 52 weeks, which obviously is the next band that is measured. When court proceedings go over 52 weeks, there are often a number of reasons for this, usually complexity, delays in sort of independent assessments, etc. But we had 47 children conclude this year at 53 weeks and above, which is a huge number for us. And not all of that is about, our end of the work. That is the complexity and the range of expert witnesses that are often required. Currently, our longest case in proceedings is a sibling group of 3. They've been opened into the court for 145 weeks. So you're edging on nearly 3 years there. And that was following non-accidental injury to a child. And this year we concluded one family which had an international element that took 155 weeks to conclude. So if you think of one family that should be open for 26 weeks on a social worker's caseload, open for 155, it really compounds that challenge around caseload management and progression. The issue of large sibling groups has been highlighted to committee previously, and this year we've issued on 98 families since the 1st of January. 18 of those have had a sibling group of 3 or more. So just under 20% of those families have a sibling group of 3 or 4, and within that this year there was a sibling group of 6 and a sibling group of 8. So there is more detail in there in the report in relation to the Cape proceedings, and I'm happy to take questions because I do know that you're pushed for kind of time, and Vanessa's here to answer anything around early help.
Yes, very quickly. The number of unaccompanied asylum-seeking children, are they part of the national transfer scheme?
Yes, they are.
So, and is that linked to the number of children in the county or?
Yeah, so all of our top level numbers are reported include our unaccompanied asylum seeking children. And we are part of the national transfer scheme, and we are expected to take 0.1% of our child population at any one time. So if we're not at that threshold, then we have to continue to take those children and young people. We regularly do take up to that threshold and sometimes beyond.
Yeah, lovely, thanks. I'm very sorry, Chairman, I need to travel to get to two other things. I'm sorry.
You mentioned the 20% of the children in care are in residential or supportive accommodation. What is there a particular reason for those children to be in that care? Is it just simply that you can't find family settings for them?
So a lot of them need to be. I would say the vast majority need to be, and if they're in there because they don't need to be, then that's where Stepping Stones works with them to step them down very quickly. So sometimes we will bring children into a residential because there isn't a foster placement available that day or that week when they need to move. But Stepping Stones' focus, which is, sits under Danessa, is very much around let's move those in a planned way to a foster placement or back home or whatever as quickly as possible. So we have a number of disabled children with very complex needs who are in long-term residential care. They represent about 12% of that 20%. No, about 8%, I think it is now. I think it's shifted. It's about 8% of that 20%. And then the other children are either that their needs are extremely complex, the therapeutic needs are extremely complex, or that they have behavioural challenges that mean that they need a higher level of support and intervention. And obviously about 11 of those children are our own internal homes.
It's comforting to see that, you know, they have to be in that care, because I'm guessing that your strategy is any child that doesn't have these issues should be in
absolutely
family settings.
We do have a challenge with finding foster placements for sibling groups and children under the age of 12 at the moment. So that's why we opened Pebble House, so that we have a home that is for children under the age of 12, that we can bring them in, do the work, and then work to finding fostering families as quickly as possible. Because that is becoming a real challenge in terms of the wider market. The residential market is not in the best possible state at the moment nationally.
Okay.
Yeah, so it's probably not about foster placements. It would be useful to know that if we could achieve, I don't know, 10% more foster carers, what would we be able to reduce the population going to, or is it that the needs are such that they couldn't use those foster carers? I'm just a little bit unsure as to some data around that would be useful at some stage, because I think, you know, we're trying to set the council's budget and trying to see where we can make savings and where we need to make investments, and in that scenario it's useful to be clear on that. The other thing, I think, I mean, you mentioned caseloads. I think going forward it'd be useful to have some data on caseloads for not for this report but for future reports, because I do think it's something we need to keep aware of. A lot of figures are going in the right direction, and my reading of what you're saying is caseloads haven't really gone very much in the right direction, or not as much as we would have hoped, and so I think it's something we need to keep an eye on going forward.
Can I just respond very briefly, Chair, to the fostering? So there is a fostering project currently, which I'm happy to kind of give an update on as committee wishes. Again, it sits under Vanessa, but we have recruited significantly more foster carers in the last 2 years. There's never enough, and anything that we can do to share the fostering campaigns that are on regularly on the Facebook page, etc., that would be really helpful. But Vanessa's quite happy to get some that data, because we have recruited significantly more last year and this year. It's never enough.
Keep sharing.
We've actually recruited a 1% more
Yeah,
than we did last year.
I mean, Claire will know. Sorry, just to respond to that, and Claire will know about this. We're on a collaborative budget meeting, and one of the things that we're going to consult the public on is whether we should extend foster care in order to save, I think it was £1 million or so was put against it. I just don't see how that fits in with what you're saying, because
So
it sounds like we done it.
So
But,
extend it
it's
again.
further, okay, but you're very confident that there are children going to residential care who could go to foster care if we could extend this. That's my question.
Yes.
Okay, sorry.
Yeah, can I come back on that? I mean, I think the point was we were going to mention fostering to highlight it. I think some members on the group were not very keen on that. I was, however, very keen on that because I think we need to bang the drum about fostering at every opportunity, and every opportunity we get, whether it's via consultation on the budget or whatever, or your background on your screen, which I've got, you know, any opportunity, because I think we're doing some fantastic work but to actually embed fostering in our authority and get people in the authority fostering, I think it's going to take probably about 5 years. So I do think it is worth banging the drum every opportunity. And thank you for all you're doing, Vanessa, because, you know, it's a great job.
Can I just say something about fostering? My daughter, who doesn't live here, unfortunately, in Wiltshire, they will only give her disabled children, and she didn't want that because she has to work during the day. Now, she just couldn't make them understand that she wanted to foster somebody that she would, you know, take to school, make sure they were all right, but she needed to be at home during the day to work. She can't manage on the money from fostering, and she needed to have both lots of money. So really, I'm glad that you were doing so well, because I don't think they are where she was in Wiltshire.
It is difficult in assessment to understand that for some families they can make working parents work and some they can't. It is a really difficult balance, and if you've got 2 carers working full time, that's quite often it's not suitable for fostering.
But she was at home.
Yeah,
she made it was easier, you know.
But
can we move? Sorry, because
Sorry.
I appreciate it's a one. So
just in terms of councillor Houghton, 30 seconds.
Yeah.
Ruth, Councillor Houghton asked a question around difference in figures around including UASC. So as of today, we've got 693 children who are responsibility of Shropshire, as in Shropshire children. 728 is the total if we include the UASC. So it is quite a significant difference. So we tip below the 700 mark for children looked after who are Shropshire children rather than children that we have a responsibility to.
Okay.
Yeah. Thank you. Next item is where are we? Work programme, Tanya.
Sorry, Chair. Just before we move on to the work programme, Duncan did make a suggestion that we actually wrote a letter of thanks to the early start team. I just wondered if we could do that when we moved on to the work programme.
Yeah.
I think the social work team in that is just
Yeah,
a great mentality. I just think it's important. Well, I just think it's helpful to them to know that the committee is very appreciative of their efforts. It's always a good thing to know. So, these weird councillors. Well, yeah, I think so. It's something we can do, so why wouldn't we? A lot of work's gone on, and a lot of things.
Anybody's against that. Actually.
No, I have no idea. I've heard everybody.
I know we haven't all nodded, but we agree with
She
that.
got for 2 minutes. We talked about.
I tried to get out today.
I know. You brought up about enable, and I think that would be something good for people that don't know about it, for it to come into committee. Do you think so?
Okay, should we talk about work programme?
Yes, that's fine.
So we'll go on to work programme now, conscious of time, and maybe we need a 3-hour people's committee.
Yeah.
We're not break in between because, you know, you are really engaged in the conversations. But our next committee is towards the end of February. And I've just been kind of noting around some of the conversations that we've had this morning and some ideas, but conscious of time. So we'll have the Q3 performance report, very much similar style we've just done, but I suggest we have that as well as a focus with enable, bring some enable data into that next performance report, as well as hopefully by then the adult CQC report will be hopefully available then for them to look at. The other area I've written down here is technology enabled care programme. We've heard a bit of that today.
terms of how we're supporting people differently here in Shropshire. And I wonder whether or not committee might find that helpful for that next item. And then we also heard David in terms of the non-diagnosis led support for CYP with neurodiverse needs. So there are the three areas that I've picked up from this morning's conversation. I'll put those forward and then we can have further discussion around.
Do you still want me to know?
No.
I did ask last time.
I was just conscious
that we looked into private operations who are coming back on us. And I'm having still getting doctors telling me that they've got these people ringing them up. They need to go to hospital because they've fallen when they've come home. They just bring them home and leave them in the house. They come from private operations, they bring them home and they drop them off at home and they've not got anybody organised to look after them or anything. And one woman ended up in one of our nursing homes, which she paid for.
Can I suggest you attend the next health meeting? HOSC.
Yeah.
Health Overview Scrutiny.
Yeah, that's usually Tracy and Heather. I don't like to step on their toes.
No. I would absolutely give Heather a ring, I think.
Yeah.
Sorry, I was just gonna say there's nothing to stop this committee make that suggestion to the Health Scrutiny Committee, as well as doing as Claire says, speak to them within your own room.
It's costing us a lot of money.
But I think yeah, we'll take it away and we'll put it down as a
Look at that. This woman help.
But Tom said they're going to look into it. So
we'll take it away and suggest it to the Health Scrutiny Committee and see if they want to pick it up or not.
Thank you very much.
And you finished? You finished?
No, you.
Tom's, a while back we were planning for future agendas, and I said to you that I was a little worried that we have all these mapped out. What happens to when something comes up that we're unexpected or whatever? What do we do? And you did. We slotted in. But consultation for the send an alternative provision is very in depth. Yeah, there's a lot in there, isn't there? I've only read as a priority one so far. I haven't had enough time. There's stuff in there that I think is it's not micromanagement. That's not our job. I'd hate to do that. But maybe things we could have asked about and why are you asking that and that sort of thing.
Can I make a suggestion? Because I think one of the things we talked about when we said we were going to have just 4 scrutiny meetings a year was what we were going to do is we're going to have member briefings. And I think actually that's an ideal topic to have as a member briefing so that David Shaw can brief all members. You know, and when he does a briefing like that, it's recorded. So it's on the members' gateway or whatever it is. And so everybody can watch it. So I think it's a really good idea, but I actually think it should be done as a members' briefing because we've still got the performance days to do. And realistically, 1 or 2 other things, we haven't got enough space for everything. I'll be here all day. So that would be ideal for a member briefing, I think. But
I was just about to say exactly the same thing.
Yeah.
Fine, thank you.
Same thing.
The next meeting is the 26th of February. So because it is, I'd like to wish you all a happy Christmas. Enjoy your time with your families. Thank you all for today. Do you know what? It's really nice. When I first started, the committee we had never used to ask 20 questions. You guys have so many. It's fabulous.
Thank
you.
We're interested.
Yeah, you are.